Other than that, I think we're all set. I make a motion, we accept the agenda with the one add-on.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And if anybody's here for the Countryway Historical Society project, they've requested a continuance, so that won't be on tonight.
That's gonna be continued again.
Yeah, Carol, did he mention when? Okay.
Did it say how long?
Till the next continuance.
Yeah.
Pain in the butt. Can I just make a quick motion since that's an RDA?
Yeah.
I make a motion, we continue the Historic Societies to March 2nd.
Second.
No time.
Pat, did they ever anybody talk to the water department or anything about that? Right, that's trying to get the little steps in at the...
Right,
Yeah.
the removal of the Phragmites is allowed because it could choke off the pipes for the water department, so that was considered important. The steps...
There was like a bunch of brush cutting and stuff, though, that went along that edge. That's all part of the Phragmite removal?
Yeah, choking off with invasive that's why Jimmy and those guys got the permit the first time.
Okay.
The step area, placement of step for step,
Yep.
it would be an easy thing. If it's new steps going in, I think we'd have to run it by Water Resources.
Okay,
So, or Dave would have to run it by them.
okay.
So we have a motion.
Second?
It's been seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
And who's next?
We have a resident from 12 Rebecca Road who we sent a letter to about a wall being built in the backyard to hold up fill without a permit. So we wrote a letter, and they're in the process of getting something written up about that, the change, but the resident came and I asked him if he'd like
Sure.
to.
Sure, come on up.
Sit up here.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Name and...
David Lusko, 12 Rebecca Road.
Hey, Dave. So, maybe you can just
Want me to
tell
just
us...
give you, so,
Sure.
it's my wife's house, I'm not, but, the house originally had a retaining wall. So essentially, we just did a repair because the existing retaining wall had failed, or is in the process of failing. And that's really all that it's really just a repair of an existing retaining wall. So we didn't do any dredge or fill, really no alteration.
What's the wall made of?
The new wall?
Yeah.
Is block.
And the old one was block?
No, the old one was telephone poles, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, are you in the process of
Well,
doing...
we had the property surveyed before we did the work. And so we've talked to our surveyor, and we need to file a letter of intent.
Yeah, I had mentioned, we need to know the original elevation of the poles that we're holding, how much material, if any new material came in or out, or what the wall, what went into putting the wall up, because we
Yeah.
like to have those done right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you understand, to any movement or anything in that area, it's a resource area, it's under the jurisdiction of the commission.
And now we understand.
Now we
yeah.
understand, yeah.
I mean, honestly, I was under the impression that if you do a repair of an existing structure,
Yeah.
and there's no alteration, that it wouldn't be a...
Yeah, any
That was my
earthwork,
thought.
any changes or anything like that, you need to file. So I guess it's going to be an after-the-fact filing, but to Pat's point, we just need to understand as much as maybe some old photographs, anything that you can show us that was there before.
Okay. I'm
would
not
be-
sure we have, but we'll, yeah.
Whatever.
He had a survey done, so, I mean, I would bring the survey in, and the person who did the landscape work, they could describe what they
Yeah, we
took
have a
out, what
complete
they-
description of the
Yeah.
work that was done.
Okay.
But there was no fill brought in.
Yeah,
Probably the only alteration would be, with the retaining wall, you have crushed stone behind the retaining wall, just so the property drains
Sure.
better. But where we are in Rebecca Road, the property's always been elevated, so our property's about 4 feet, 3 or 4 feet above the marsh.
yep,
And we're like the last house before it drops down
okay,
to the marsh. So when that floods, it actually kind of floods down our neighbors when there's spillover at high tide during a storm or whatever.
Yeah.
And it really just fills up from the marsh,
okay.
as opposed to water, there's no water running
Flowing
off
over
our
the-
property, Our property doesn't doesn't flood,
Okay.
you know, so. I guess our plan would be to come back at the next meeting with,
Yeah, I didn't know whether we should look at an RDA or an NOI. If there was a change in elevation, or if there was a change in location, it would definitely be an NOI, but I don't know, so the material
It's
stayed
just the
in
material is
place.
different, right?
Well, the material stayed in place, the filled material stayed in place, and then it's just the material of the wall that changed, so.
So what are you gonna,
RDA?
Yeah, I don't know, it's up to you guys.
what's the RDA?
It's easier than an NOI, it does require a...
That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah.
Well,
It's the
you
same
know, if
amount of
anything, we
letters, but-
actually, when the work was done, the wall itself probably came back a couple inches from what was there previously. It just gives you better access, because our neighbor has a fence. On one side, there's a fence, and our wall, so there's just access now, so.
I think an RDA would take care of this, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think the big thing...
an RDA is a simpler format.
Sure, okay.
We do like to make sure that the abutters know that you've come before us and there's going to be a hearing. So if it was in the newspaper, we may want to just say you have to notify your abutters on either side.
Okay.
Just that there is going to be a meeting about this, in case they have comments that they'd like to make.
Okay.
And then the newspaper could cover the rest of the people, but maybe the abutters with
Okay.
with a letter, so. Or their signature that they have read the RDA. It's called the Request for Determination of Applicability.
Okay.
You can get them through our office.
Okay.
And online, so.
It would be simpler for you, but to Pat's point, an RDA is typically just advertised in the paper, and you might want to just let anybody that is right next to it know. And
Okay, can we drop them a letter and?
Yep. The
Yeah.
advertisement.
I mean, we really only have 3 abutters,
Yeah,
so, direct abutters. I mean,
Right.
I don't know how you define a butter, but.
okay.
Yeah, because what you have to do is you'll get the ad together for the paper. It's fairly simple. You could just give one of those to each of your neighbors and either have them sign off or certify that you delivered it to their house, I guess.
Do we keep copies of an RDA application, or does he get it online, or what's the best way?
Well, there are online, so.
Through which site? Okay. Yeah, so if somebody can stop in at the Concom office during the day and grab a copy of the application.
Okay.
All right?
Yep.
And,
Yeah, and you'd have until March 2nd to get it back to us, and then you'd be on for the 16th, because we have to go through the newspaper advertising, so.
great.
So in the next 2 weeks.
anybody?
That'll do it.
No, sounds good.
Thank you for coming in.
Thanks a lot for coming
thanks
in,
for-
appreciate it.
yeah.
Appreciate it.
Do you have an email address? I could email it to you.
Sure, absolutely.
Right on that.
Carol's so high-tech. We always forget it.
Unlike some other people in that office.
Hey,
What?
hey.
You know, she's talking about Nancy.
You don't want to stay for the evening?
Just kind of come back at 9 or 10.
All right, what's next?
So we can, gonna move right into, actually, this next one, 6:30, they request a continuance? So is it
How long?
Princey?
Yeah.
Just go out 2 weeks? Oh, yeah, they're the ones trying to work something out.
Yeah.
I make a motion that we continue 134 Hummer Rock Beach Road to March 2nd at 6:30.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we got a few minutes before we can start Diamond Development. Do you want to run through some of the odds and ends that?
Yeah, we had a couple of certificate of compliance requests. 138 Stockbridge Road is the empty lot that's been there for a while. They had an order, and there's no work had been done, so we can close that out as certificate, no work.
Which one on,
This is down as you go into, what is...
The end of Beers Lane.
Bierce Lane, right across from Bierce.
oh, yeah.
And so it went through procedure with the town over taxes, and the old order would need to be changed. They're going to be doing something different, so we can close out.
Close it.
Yep.
Okay.
Close it out and issue a certificate.
Do we have a street, is there?
Yeah, it's 138, and it's, we don't have the number in front of us of the DEP filing,
Okay.
but
Do you need a motion for that, or just,
Yeah, just to get a certificate of compliance, there's no work having been done.
okay. Do we have a motion for that?
I make a motion, we issue a certificate of compliance to 138 Stockbridge Road.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next one, I think Paul's been out to, and I don't know, maybe Richard has too. This is rebuild the deck and the front porch, and there was a collapsed wall. And this one was done, I think, by Bob Crawford, and it was completed exactly according to the plan. So I would say it's ready for a certificate.
Okay.
I make a motion, we issue a certificate of compliance to 5 Irving Street.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The next one
They did that.
is a fairly recently built project, Wood Island Road.
Yeah.
Okay, this was amended last year. There was some ledge in the area, and they
Yeah.
changed the
It's all
decking.
ledge out there.
So we have the original plan here.
This is the last house on the left before you go over the causeway.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep,
We were down, I was down there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right behind Mr. Gay.
Yep.
Okay, so that was the approved plan. They came back in and asked to change this.
Right.
And we allowed that, but then the as-built came in. All up in this area looks pretty much the same, but there's no contours and elevations on the as-built. And this is definitely different if you're looking at this, because that has a gradual incline, it had more natural vegetation, and this doesn't. This has a retaining wall and a set height from here to here. It may be, this is all undisturbed. But
This is,
it's a little slow.
this is right on,
On salt marsh.
Salt Marsh.
Yeah.
So this is, did they replace the septic system?
No, they didn't need to. I believe they just, had it tested and they were okay.
But you think that it looks like there's some sort of wall or piece here, and it's showing up on here.
Right, right. But the elevations, if you look at all the elevations, there was something there before, and then there's elevations, and now,
So there's elevation 4 here, and then it bumps up to elevation 7?
But he doesn't have elevations on the as-built,
right.
so why don't we just ask
They
him
can
to
get
put
the elevations.
elevations on the as-built?
Yeah, we've been asking for contours and elevations,
Okay,
especially in the flood zone.
right.
You don't want to be directing things, so.
That would make it
Okay.
easier.
Well, it's pretty key to find out if there's site work or not, yeah.
And everything else looked pretty much done as according to the plan.
Okay.
A lot of ledge out there. So, all right.
The house
so
was built
Get
on
the
ledge.
elevation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So that's all the CFCs. Do you want to take one more minute, Penny, on the conservation restrictions?
Sure. Frank, myself, and Karen from CPC met a couple of weeks ago with the New England Forestry, and we're looking to get the CRs put on. There's about 13 properties that have been purchased through CPC, which do not have CRs on. And we met with them, and I know I was very impressed, and I think Frank was very impressed. And in the conversation with them about the CRs, we discussed up Bates Lane, there's about 70 acres. It's under the care and trust of the conservation. And they suggested we put a CR on that.
Can you explain what the CR is for everybody who's watching?
It's a conservation restriction, and it is in perpetuity. It will be with that land forever, so it will stay as natural as it can be, okay? And when you purchase land through CPC, by state law with CPC, you have to have a CR on that property. So the long and the short is that they suggested to Frank and myself and Karen that you really should, let's put a CR on the properties that's conservation land, it's properties that the town acquired back in the 70s, as while we're doing the new purchased parcels. And then it's very cohesive for them to monitor the whole thing. And so last night, the three of us went to the selectmen and explained to them about the New England Forestry and what we were hoping to do. And we asked them to give us their blessing to continue on, and they all voted in favor for us to continue on the route. And we're hoping...
It was late, they were tired.
They were tired. They were very tired. So we're going to go on to the next step with the New England Forestry, and if they accept us in March 24th when they meet, then we'll start actually putting together the CRs.
So they would hold them?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great.
All of them.
It's the New England Forest Foundation. They're based in Littleton, Mass.,
Yeah.
but they
They're great.
protect property all over New England and different places in the U.S. And they're a pretty substantial organization with a little bit of a bend towards working forests. Maybe we could eventually develop some firewood programs, maybe a little timber harvest. They have good access to foresters and other management practices. So I think it's a good mix.
This is great.
Property we have,
Yeah.
and it's something that's been lagging that we hope to get caught up on. So Penny's been forging ahead with that, which has been awesome. And that in combination with getting our access areas, parking and stuff done in the spring will lend a lot towards all this property we've acquired and getting folks out there. So it's good. And we also had a good turnout. The rec department had their winter festival
That's right.
at Widows Walk, and we were able to participate. Bill
It was a lot of fun.
was there.
A lot of fun. It was great.
We had a good time.
Yeah.
Penny and chatted with a good number of people that didn't even know where some things are, passed on
That
a
new
lot of maps.
website that's up there for the
The
trails,
historicsituatetrails.org. The website is absolutely
It's gorgeous.
phenomenal. It does the whole town, whether it's biking or walking trails, it does paddling.
paddling, yeah.
And it also has a section called the Maxwell Scamp, and that is the trails up the west end, the conservation land. And it's,
SituateHistoricTrails.org.
or,
I think it's Historic Situate.
Historic Situate?
Yeah,
I have it written down.
Historic Situate Trails.
We gotta get it right.
Yeah, I'll get
Yeah,
it.
no, it is, because when I first went on to it, I thought it should be Scituate, but
It's just-
historicsituatetrails.org.
Okay.
And it's a phenomenal website. Everyone in town should click on it. They did an awesome job, and that was funded by CPC.
Great. Good.
Nice.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Diamond Development, 290 Hatherley Road. All right, this is a continuance, sorry. So why don't you, there's, I think, some people in the room interested in this, so maybe pitch it, turn it back, or at least in the middle. Lisa, well, it's all the way back if you can see it.
I'll just reach over.
It's up to Paul.
Okay.
Good evening.
That's what this is pertinent to.
I know you guys are both famous, but state your name and rank.
Steve Bjorklund.
And Stan Humphreys, coastal geologist with LEC.
Yeah, and I'll start if I can. As Frank said, we opened the hearing up, I think, 3 weeks ago. Went through a lot of the wetland issues, except for your consultant, I believe, Tom Liddy, came up with something in his review letter that talked about a coastal bank and whether, had a question as to whether we had a coastal bank on the site or not. It's not on the beachfront out at Egypt. This is actually back on Hadley Road and the fish pond that's there. But when you read the definitions of what coastal banks are, he had some question as to whether that would constitute a bank or not. So we retained Stan to come in and take a look at it for us, and basically drafted a letter that Pat got. A couple of the plans that you're going to see tonight, you don't have a copy of yourself yet. It was just created. I've been going back and forth with Pat as to just what we wanted on the plan for information, and there's some transects. What this plan shows is there's 4 transects that go through the property, which is how you establish whether there's a coastal bank or not, and gets into the slopes and things like that. So Stan will chat about that. If we flip that over on the other side, you're going to see some profiles basically through the transects. And probably the most elaborate bank delineation when we were involved in Great Rock Island, and there were literally 100 transects, I think, through that property. So this one, we've actually got 4, because the property's less than 100 feet wide. And what happens evidently is that they go out, when they do the topography, they take all kinds of ground shots out there, the surveyors. And then that gets plugged into the computer. The computer generates what the topography is on the lot. And Stan will get into some of the terminology that's involved in it, but the result of what the surveyor came up with is what shows on the plans here. Stan basically interprets that to determine if we have a coastal bank or don't have a coastal bank. I understand that we're probably going to have another consultant get involved in this from the town side that specializes in coastal banks. We don't have a problem with that, if that's what the commission chooses to have us do, but hopefully Stan can at least give a presentation on what we've got on site, and we'll go from there.
Is it possible, do you also have the plan that shows the house? Maybe it's good that we can be seeing both of them.
It's underneath it, yeah.
Can we spread those out so that we can see both of them?
I think it's actually taped to the middle, but let me...
Or maybe you can just hang that one off to the side, Steve, or something, but... Thank you. Okay.
I'll have
Yep.
Stan take over.
As Steve mentioned, I've essentially put a memo together that the commission has, giving a lot of my observations at a site visit without the benefit of having transects done at that point. And my conclusion essentially was that I didn't see an observable break in slope. I didn't think that there was a coastal bank out on the site, but I left the door sort of open to seeing the transect information. In plan view, what I've done on the left-hand side is shaded areas on the property that have a slope greater than 10-on-1. So between, let's say, I think it's elevation 9 and 11 in this area. There's another small area between 8 and 9, and another area over here between, I think, 8 and 11. The point being that the predominant characteristics of the topography on the site is land flatter than 10-on-1. Only in those shaded areas is it greater than 10-on-1, and the discussion there unfolds as to whether there are 3 coastal banks on the site, I think. It should be pointed out that they're fragmented, they're isolated, they're discontinuous. It's not one continuous slope along the entire property. And in my dealings with other projects, the DEP has ruled that it's the predominant characteristic of the topography, not these micro-topographic features that might pop up and be over 10% slope. The transects, starting right to left, 1 through 4, were done to show, I'll just use the transect 1, what a 10% slope looks like across the topography, then what the land topography is with the 100-year flood over it. And these areas in blue just identify where on the transect those shaded areas that I had in gray are located. So these are very isolated mounds, if you want to call them that have some expression of slope greater than 10 on 1, but I really believe that it doesn't rise to fit the definition of a coastal bank.
Is that the
And that's by the
definition?
state. If we jump to the town, is a little bit more stringent in defining the coastal bank as the observable break and slope above the 100-year floodplain or the 100-year floodplain elevation, whichever's higher. So without an observable slope, I guess one could argue, well, why not the 100-year floodplain? We don't have the state's slope of 10 on 1 that even gets up high enough to the floodplain. So,
The question, did Tom Liddy look at the, Tom Liddy is a consultant with Lucas, or environmental, and Lucas has been a consultant for the town, just explaining to folks that are in the room here. Lucas Environmental has been a consultant for the town in projects like the suburban land, Goulston property, where they'll look at environmental issues on the behalf of the town of Scituate. So did Tom Liddy go to the site and look at this?
He looked at the site and looked at all the, he was the one that pointed out there could possibly be a coastal bank. And then Steve had Stan get involved and then get the transcripts. So when I spoke with Tom Liddy, he doesn't have the qualifications, you know, not being a surveyor and engineer, to get the transcripts. He didn't feel comfortable doing that, but I spoke today with Rebecca Haney, who is the coastal zone person. I put a call into DEP, I haven't heard back, but the information I got from Rebecca was that if you have a qualified coastal geologist looking at a survey transect plan, you know, we could probably base a decision based on that. Okay. And I had a question for Stan. Stan, did they mention anywhere that you have to have one of the transects going to the land subject to coastal storm flowage endpoint, the highest point in base flood elevation, or like one of your transects didn't have to cross that line? You were just looking at spots on the parcel where it was possibly 10 to 1.
I can comment on it if I can, Frank. Originally, and Tom Liddy was involved in this, we started the transects by going from the wetland line and coming all the way up to the front of the property, up to Hadley Road. And he originally had us cut that back and go to elevation 13. So we cut it back and went to elevation 13. Then we went to the DEP policy guidelines, and 92.1 is their policy guideline on defining the coastal banks. And we brought them back out again to cover the whole site. So we've done it both ways.
But you never got a greater than 1 to 10 at the base flood line?
No.
correct.
Okay, that's
So
all-
just-
that's what I meant to ask.
Yeah, and maybe to just, so that folks that are looking at this and don't go to a million conservation meetings, the top of the coastal bank, we're trying to determine all the resource areas that this project is in. There's a number of different resource areas or wetlands, zones, areas, whatever you want to call them, that this project lies in. The coastal, I'm just trying to describe, like, if the top of a seawall would be a real plain
Artificial coastal bank.
artificial coastal bank, right?
Yeah.
I think it was probably when I first got on the commission, you were presenting something, and we got our lesson on this, and the different shapes that this can take, and how they're not just defined in one particular way. There's there's a whole number of different profiles that a coastal bank could have, but an artificial one, the top of coastal bank would be the top of a seawall. And then if you had a stone revetment, there'd be a place where that might break if there was a top and then a slope and then another break. There's a whole bunch of coastal banks that can form on that. So it gets a little complicated, but it's an important piece to know in where things are on this lot.
It might help, Frank, if Stan goes through the performance standards of a coastal bank, and then people might understand exactly what a coastal bank does.
Might help the commission, you can,
Okay, try to be brief.
Sure.
There are essentially two types of coastal banks. One that most people are familiar with is along the open coast, Fourth Cliff, that's eroding and supplying sediment to the adjacent beach, dune, and barrier beach systems. Another type of coastal bank is one that provides a vertical buffer to stormwaters. So wind and rain erosion, water running off the upland down to the sea can be an important function of a coastal bank. Many coastal banks found back landward of the open ocean don't supply a sediment to an adjacent beach. That's first and foremost the classification that we are in this situation. There's no adjacent beach, there's no eroding bank that's supplying sediment. So the question is, does it provide a vertical buffer if it meets the slope criteria? Your regs even open up the discussion that although there may be a coastal bank with a vertical buffer, it may not even serve storm damage prevention and flood control values. That's even a rarer instance where if you had the slope criteria to demonstrate that it doesn't function like a coastal bank is kind of difficult. But and the number of different scenarios that I think you alluded to under the state policy 92-1, for instance, would have a coastal bank that exceeds 10-on-1, breaks a slope, goes up to the 100-year floodplain. So you have a coastal bank and land subject to coastal storm flowage. And what I alluded to earlier about the commission's more stringent definition is, I think if you have that slope of 10-on-1 and that's the observable break, the commission wants the higher elevation of the 100-year floodplain taken.
okay.
So that's where the town really supersedes the state to some extent, making land subject to coastal storm flowage a bank.
Okay. Can we flip this easel back around? So to your point, where there's just these kind of fragmented places where this slope occurs, you're saying that there really isn't a coastal bank on this site because of its fairly even slope towards the pond, and if it were, it would be the 100-year, or...
What
I'm-
I'd want to see is these shaded areas to be one continuous shading across the site. That gets us to elevation 11, let's say.
Okay,
With the 100-year floodplain being at elevation 13, your bylaw says, contrary to what the state would take as the top of the bank, you would take the top of the bank back here.
so the Scituate says it's there in our bylaw.
If the slope criteria
If the-
is met
if the slope
by the
cri-
state.
Okay,
If it was greater than 10-on-1,
yeah,
back to Hatherley Road, let's say, and that's where it broke because it's a flat street. The top of bank might be up at Hatherley Road, further landward than elevation 13. It could be up to elevation 14,
okay.
but that doesn't exist.
Can I ask what-
Yeah, no, we want to, actually, why don't we start?
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to...
Well, right from the get-go, is it my understanding you're going to have Lucas go out and verify what will be
Well,
being told?
after speaking with Rebecca, she thought that, a qualified coastal geologist was looking at transects. They may be able to explain it as well as the next person that we would get to. It would only be if we had looked at this and said, gee, that doesn't seem right to us. But when she was out there, she was talking about it's still flat, because it would be, it didn't look like one to her. And then she said, if you had a coastal geologist, take a look at it. We still have the issue of land subject to coastal storm flow, so it's still flood zone, but it may not trigger the coastal bank designation, except for under the local bylaw, which doesn't really have performance standards for coastal bank if it's at the limit of the base flood elevation.
And we also have the issue with the 50-foot buffer to use.
The dark shaded areas are close to or meeting the 10-to-1 slope area. Aren't they almost contiguous? I mean, how much space is in between them? To your point, you're saying that they're not, but it looks like they're practically touching, are they not?
Not quite.
No, those are three distinct, separate areas. Farther away, it's hard to see. So you've got a separation there,
Yeah,
a
what's-
bigger separation here.
Is this to scale? How much?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Frank, you do it. How much space do we have in between?
20 feet.
Are they-
Well, it looks like the transects are 20 feet apart, so there might be,
So that one might be 5, but that one might be 15, 20?
just, do you know how close we are to 10% on these other pieces? I mean,
Just over the 10%.
so it's also just under 10%.
Yep. Yeah,
So-
it's pretty, I mean, the site's pretty flat.
Yeah, but 10% is the trigger.
Yep.
So some of them that are just over, but there's others that are just under it as well. I mean,
Right,
that,
so when you go to the guideline, which is the policy 92.1, that's where it says to bring in the coastal geologist to determine if there's one or not.
okay.
So there is some engineering involved in it and surveying involved.
Right.
But ultimately, it's up to the coastal geologist and the commission.
Do you know, Steve, just what increments the surveyor took these shots at?
Oh, God, I don't know, there's a whole nother plan where they went out, and the
But that's
transects
pretty
actually line up.
important, but if we're splitting hairs on the grade, the increments that the surveyor took the shots at could be fairly key to making sure that it's
Right,
close,
that's-
which is a reason that we may want to have a person do this, I guess. I mean, I'm not debating Mr. Humphreys, he's looking at the information that the surveyor put together for
If
this.
you have a coastal geologist look at it, I don't have a problem at all with that.
I'm wondering more, do we want to have a surveyor look at it?
It's, how many spots we're taking? Yeah, there's a whole bunch
And I-
of spots that are taken up.
Just the only reason that, back when we did Herringbrook Meadows, we originally had an isolated wetlands that was a certain dimension. And by actually resurveying it and getting all those dimensions, getting all those additional grades, that isolated wetlands expanded fairly substantially. I'm not saying that the surveyor didn't have the right information on here, but he's taken shots, and usually they work within a range, whether it's 3, 4, 5 inches, a half a foot. So that's my question, is what was the range that this,
I mean, I can give your consultant a copy of all the spot grades that they took out.
I mean, maybe that's a helpful,
Right, and what happens is, ironically, on this particular plan, nothing above elevation 11 was above that percent.
I get it.
And that's where, again, I urge everybody to read the policy 92.1. I mean,
Yeah.
that really lays it out, because this has been such an issue on so many sites. The DEP came out with a very extensive policy on how you figure this out. And if you read the whole thing and you look at the end of it, it says, get the coastal geologist to take a look at it.
right.
They could take shots all over the place, and you're right, depending on exactly where the shot is taken, and the surveyor has no idea, he just goes out and just keeps taking shots,
Right.
down through the site. I mean, I'm not saying he took a shot every,
Oh, it's a tough
5
spot,
feet or
it's also
10
a very
feet.
difficult spot, it's all brushy.
really difficult.
Yeah.
So,
So that's why we opted to go with Stan and just
yeah,
take a look.
and I'm not, he's looking at the information that the surveyor put forward, and he's making his assessment on that. My question would be more, where we're this close on some of this, should our review be a coastal geologist, or should it really be a surveyor getting that information to say that this 10% or less is,
And if we asked them to provide the drawings with the angles, and like Stan had that on the back of that one.
And it was just finished, so we'll get copies of the 4 transects that you saw in the back.
Still have a
Get them to
couple
Pat tomorrow.
Okay. I didn't mean to interrupt you, it was,
No, I'm still going. Did I hear you say definitively that you have decided that this is not a coastal bank? Did I hear you say that definitively? Okay. Does that change because of its proximity to, what is that, a pond? Is that technically, what is that?
I think it's part of the chain ponds.
Okay. So do those rules or guidelines change in any way because of its proximity to a pond?
No.
Okay. And then next question is more for you, Pat. Are we talking only about this particular aspect of this right now, or are we talking about everything in?
Well, we were looking at all the resource areas, the coastal resource areas. This was the one that was,
So, but right now, we're only covering the
no,
coastal bank issue.
no, you can, I mean, you've got Steve here, you've got a
Okay.
coastal geologist,
Okay.
so any other questions?
Well,
I mean, we can do the coastal bank piece first,
yeah,
but then there's a whole bunch of other,
I reserve my right to come back with more questions, knowing that.
good for now. Paul?
No, I mean, I think we're probably going to want to get someone to review, and we got to decide on looking at the survey they did in the review, or like you said, see if that's adequate.
Great. Lisa?
I agree with additional information with the survey. I think that would be important.
Okay.
Lucas Environmental recommended, rather than having another coastal person go out there, to have someone that would be familiar with the transcript, some more of a...
Right, well, I guess
Surveyor.
that's my point as well.
If we were going to take the next step, rather than have, a coastal person, then
Right.
we would consider that. And if that's the case, we'd probably be continuing. If it's not the case, we could move on and cover all the different...
Well, I think, we have a group of people here, we might as well vet this. I don't see why we wouldn't just do this piece. There's more to this project, and it looks to me like there's abutters and other folks in the room. This is kind of boring in a way, and a technicality, but I think we might as well we're going to more than likely continue this hearing anyways, but we might as well continue on this evening with other details of the project.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where are you going to put it?
Let's just make a quick comment
Sure.
on that. And I have no problem answering whatever questions I can answer if they come up through the audience and all that.
Yeah.
I do want to say that, I'm expecting it would get continued tonight, and the reason why I didn't continue before the meeting was Stan was available.
Sure.
So I wanted to try to get through the Coastal Bank presentation anyway, and Brad Holmes, who's my wetland scientist, is on vacation.
Yep.
So if something gets technical on the wetland issue itself that I can't answer, I apologize, but...
Yeah, well, that'll have to get answered on the next one.
I'd like to get him to come back in.
Okay.
Have we covered this part yet?
Well,
So,
that's what
I
I
guess,
kind of said, we have that issue
The
still,
red
which is
elephant
glaring
running
to
down
me.
the-
You could, I think, basically,
I don't,
why don't you continue to ask questions that you have about the project or comments?
well, I'm definitely concerned on the 50-foot buffer. I think it's a lot that really is not to be built on. You have that whole back corner is in the buffer, and you can't move the house any closer to the street. To me, the rest of it's kind of mute, because I don't see how you can get a house in there and not go into that 50-foot buffer.
Anything else?
No, I guess
Phil?
that's my...
Do you have another copy of the
No, right?
plan with if you want to look at it?
Well, that would be the obvious question. And I would have been the one I started out with, had we not been on the coastal bank subject.
Okay. Same. Paul?
The red pen line is at the actual 50-foot there.
Okay. For folks in the audience, the town of Scituate has a 2 two buffer zones from the wetlands. We have a 100-foot buffer where we control activities from 100 feet from the wetlands to try to minimize runoff into the wetlands, plantings, things like that. And then typically, we have a 50-foot no-build zone. Anything 50 feet from the wetlands, there'd be no construction, no earthwork. Sometimes...
We actually call it a no disturb.
No disturb zone.
Yeah.
Sometimes if we're working on an existing site where there's an existing homes, obviously there's a house built next door that's in a lot of those resource areas, but it was built prior to those regulations. So if someone were to try to add on to a house that was in closer to the 50-foot zone, we might allow alterations with what we call mitigation. In this case, the house is within the 50-foot zone, but the applicant has proposed a bunch of clearing and mitigation in the way of clearing out invasive plants and then putting in different plantings. That's kind of a short of it, but...
So how much square footage is the house in the 50?
Well, we don't have the exact, I can get the exact square footage, I can have the engineer do that, I suppose. I mean, it's the back corner of the garage, you can see the line going through there, probably a couple hundred square feet. I mean, and that's a guess, I mean, I'll come back with that at the next meeting.
Right, so
That's
it's
a
roughly,
specific question.
roughly, that corner is roughly 300 square feet.
But then in addition to
They're gonna do
the
it
house, there's also an area that's a lawn.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
behind there.
So it's probably good if you're going to get the square footage on the structure, Steve, to also know what the square footage is
A total alteration
of the
50.
total, yeah. Okay.
We'll find out, okay. And then the lawn.
And that may be in the narrative that you already have, but unfortunately Brad's not here, he's got that narrative with him.
Sure.
Okay.
Pat, do you want to,
Yeah, I could just fill in some of the abutters and residents, a little bit more of the background on this. Originally, it came in as a violation. There was some cutting in a wetland buffer area. So we contacted the property owner, and then we were told the area was going to be surveyed, and we were going to be getting maybe a house plan. So when we received the application on here, as Frank mentioned, there's a bordering vegetated wetland, there's salt pond, or brackish pond, but there's also two other resource areas that we're supposed to be protecting. And one is the riverfront area. There's a stream that connects all these chain ponds, and it runs under the street, connects to this pond. That has a 200-foot jurisdiction that we are responsible for overseeing. So there's jurisdiction that covers the whole lot. So the whole lot is in the riverfront area. So we need to look at all the performance standards that have to be met there. There's also land subject to coastal storm flowage, which is the base flood elevation, the flood line for this part of town. And that cuts up through the middle of the house, or at least through the corner of the house. The whole backyard is also in the flood zone. So there's a lot more to this than this coastal bank discussion we were having. So, and I've given a handout to commission members that Bill put together. There's like 7 pages. There's other things that we're probably going to be asking the applicant to address, wildlife habitat issues. In addition to the state description of land subject to coastal storm flowage, the town has a bylaw and regulations that address that, and there's also the standard for the Rivers Protection Act of no significant adverse impact to the whole riverfront area. So these are tough standards to satisfy, and if you're proposing a development in there, there's a lot of things you have to convince the town and the commission that you're taking care of so that we don't hurt the environment or an abutter. So that's more to come, I guess, on that. So I gave the applicant a copy of what you guys have.
okay.
I know there's a swan nesting area in there. I live up the street from this, so I know swans nest there every year.
Okay. Can we open this up to comments from the
I think so.
audience? Does anybody in the audience, and what we'd ask is that you state your name and your address. So, yes,
Sean Harris, I live at 26 Ridge Hill Road, but I grew up at 2-1 Road right across the street. My first question is, how do you determine the coastal bank line? Is that a mean high tide or is it low tide? I heard Mr. Humphries say that it's maybe possibly on the beach somewhere. And the only comment I wanted to make was the coastal bank line, in my opinion, in 1978, not my opinion, is Hathaway Road. The ocean came right across to Hathaway Road. I saw it with my own eyes. And then to conservation agents' point about the Rivers Act, I don't, and to Penny's point, I don't see how you could fit a house in here. If you have jurisdiction within 200 feet, I don't see where you'd put the house. The pink house on the corner that you referred to is, you know, within that area, but that's been there for 80 years or 100 years. And I grew up there. I don't see how you could put a house in this spot.
Yeah, on the Rivers Protection Act, there's a strict no build in the first 100 closest to the river on a new lot. Within the 100 to the 200 foot, there is some disturbance allowed. And in this case, you could go up to 5,000 square feet of disturbance. So he has proposed something that is pretty close to that, and he's looking to mitigate. But you're right, we have jurisdiction, but it's not a total restriction against building. But on the other point you made about the flooding up to Hathaway Road, we can call the coastal bank the high tide of record. It can't be based on photographs. There has to be a lot of information showing that at the storm of record, it made it to Hathaway. And if that's the case, that would be the coastal bank. So, and you know, even if it's not in the coastal bank, coastal zone management is encouraging the towns to look at where sea level rise may take us. So we're not strictly handcuffed by base flood 13. We can go higher if the commission is convinced that, gee, we're only going to be having problems down the road if we don't look at additional flooding.
Anybody else? Any questions, sir?
Yes, Robert Reardon, 298 Hathaway. You know, I've lived there since 1970.
Here's the big house.
And my mom bought the house, and she worked for the South Shore Publishing Company. She made $4.25 an hour, and she was the proofreader for that whole newspaper. And the Greenblatt brothers that owned it, if you remember, he put all the ink in that river there. Every bit of ink went in there. So he ruined, and the bathrooms went in there too, by the way. But that's going back to the 60s. But nobody knows the area, that corner, better than I do. Here we've got the swans and the ducks that come right up.
Do you want to, if you give them up here, we'll just pass them around, we'll make sure you get them back.
Sure. This here is a very good view, as you can see.
How you been?
So there we are. And what happens is, in that spot of mine, the ducks, the turtles come in the backyard, and they make a nest, and they foul up all my wildflower gardens. But they take the little eggs, and they put their eggs, and they go back right in that little corner. And the birds early in the morning, there are birds that you would never see the colors of them at 4:35 in the morning. In that corner where the woods aren't as prevalent as they used to be, as we know what happened. So those are things that I see, and the swans, you know, every 4 years they change their nest around the whole pond. They have their nest, and about every 4th year they move around the pond. So you're going to really foul up that whole little area. So the ducks are there, and right where the two properties meet, that's water that's always moving. So in the middle of the winter, when the pond is frozen, it's not frozen there. Because I think there's a stream that goes underneath to keep the water going.
Yeah, there is.
So the thing is, if you're going to develop that, then why don't you develop the glades? Why don't we just sell that all off and put $3 million homes on it? Or the rest of the North River, why don't we develop from James Landing all the way to the golf course? So sometimes it's nice just to leave certain things well enough alone. And just let nature take its way, and let nature be what nature should be. I mean, you look at the town of Norwell, if I'm not correct, if I'm not mistaken, 45% of Norwell is conservation land. Well, what would Norwell look today if it wasn't? the National Beach Show, Wellfleet and Truro, at my mother's dairy control, a small county cemetery. And if they developed those 3 towns, what would it look like up there now? You see what I mean? You could go up Route 6, and on either side of Wellfleet and Truro and Provincetown, it's just left the way it is. So if you take every parcel of land and try to put a house, you're going to lose a lot of what is natural to the site. So, like where I live, I've been there so many years, and I've seen such beauty, and, I hate to lose that beauty. Thank you.
Can I ask you just a question? Since
Yes.
you've been in the house that long, were you at the house at the blizzard of '78?
Oh, my God, yes.
So where do you think that the flooding, I mean, again, this has got to be based on a lot more than a couple of people's comments, but
The flooding, that pond, from that picture I have, there's a lot of furniture still in it. I know for a fact there's furniture that's still in it, but it was never taken out. The flooding...
was your house flooded?
Ironically, no, but what was flooded is, see, I have the upper level, and then it goes down right into the marsh. That was flooded, yes.
Well, I've seen the tide to Hadley since the 70s. We've had it up there.
Yeah, so it...
What was that storm? I can't remember.
91?
Yeah.
No names?
Yeah, that was it.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's...
Yes.
All right. Yeah, can,
You can hold on to that, I have no...
well, maybe you want to put it here. I think the applicant has a right to take a look at these things as well.
Yeah.
Just, if you don't mind putting them on the
No.
table here for a minute. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Donna Wright, 285 Hadley Road. I have you all beat. I've been there since 1960. I grew up on 2 Borden Road, and now I live right next door on 285 Hadley Road. The blizzard of '78 is not the only storm that we were oceanfront property. That ocean comes up over there that floods a lot of main storms. I was there, I saw it. I know about the turtles nesting. I grew up as a little kid there. The swans, the nest the swans have, the turtles. So if you need more than one person's view, I mean, I was a kid there. I used to row a little boat in there, I used to skate there. I know that pond as well as anybody.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to? Yes, sir.
Chuck Harris, I grew up
With me.
It's very often that all 3 siblings see things the same way, so this is...
I think that's a first.
Most of the
Sorry.
'78, we had car tires washed up on my mother's front lawn on 2 Borden Road.
A lady had a reward out for her car. She had a reward looking for her car. There was a car, she lost her car.
One of the houses ended up in the pond.
Sure.
I trapped muskrat there. There's muskrat there. There's a lot of wildlife in there. There really is turtles, we kick turtle, frog, all kinds of fish in there. And it is a nice little pond.
Okay.
And you notice the front pond on the beach is getting smaller and smaller. Pretty soon, even that pond is kind of getting close there.
The one that's on the other side of Egypt.
I was supposed
Yeah.
to meet Nancy there today, by coincidence.
Okay. And that's getting more
Yeah.
overwash.
Yep.
Okay.
But, I mean, to this day, the houses that are down, they all have to move their cars up on the other side of Hadley when there's a big storm, because they know they're gonna get wet.
They parked in my driveway, and I let them, come on up.
Okay. Anybody else? So I think, given what we've already talked about, we're going to wind up requesting a review, and Pat and I will have to talk about that, but I think we need to look at that survey piece. I'm not so sure we need another coastal piece if that doesn't change. We might want Mr. Humphries to review what's done by another surveyor, unless you feel more comfortable having another coastal person. If the state says that a coastal geologist, after examining that survey, can do that, I think it's probably more important that we look at that survey. And then I think probably having Brad at the next meeting to talk about what the mitigation is, get the information on the square footage of disturbance and the 50. I mean, I think you've heard a fair amount of comment here, and I think you know that this is not an easy or simple lot. It's a pretty controversial lot, and that there's certainly a lot of issues going on, the different setbacks. You're inside the 50. I think there's got to be good reason shown why we can change that. Again, if this was a altered site, or there was already a home on it, and someone was looking for some relief, but this is not the case. So I think it's got to be pretty strong rationale that the mitigation and the other things that you're doing to this lot offset our deviation from a 50-foot setback.
Yep. And again, if I could just comment, I mean, we hire, the survey team that we have that goes out there is actually both certified surveyors. They're both licensed in Massachusetts. So it's not they're sending some kid out there with a rod.
Yeah.
So, and that's unusual to get a survey crew where both of them are licensed guys.
Sure.
So I'm hoping that I've got the best guys doing the job for me. I personally don't care whether I have a coastal bank or don't have a coastal bank. I just want to know if there's one there. So whatever it takes to establish that is fine. I want to make sure we've got the right resource areas out there. It's the only way that I can do my job to make sure that I'm going to meet whatever performance standards we have to be able to do the work in that area.
Sure.
Whether it's the 50-foot, or whether it's mitigation, or whether it's the flood elevation, land subject to coastal storm flowage. Obviously, when you get into constructing the house, there's all kinds of requirements for me to meet those flood construction standards for the dwelling itself. Can't have a basement or anything like that. It's got to have flow-throughs. I mean, there's ways to do it, and obviously, there's a lot of construction in the floodplain. So we have to be able to meet that. It's not located in the town of Scituate floodplain. There's none of the structures in the town of Scituate floodplain. So if it was, I wouldn't be sitting here.
Right.
The Rivers Protection Act has certain requirements that we have to meet, and Sean kind of hit on it a little bit. Pat talked about it a little bit, but there is a provision in the Rivers Protection Act for pre-existing lots prior to 1996, so that they don't take away all the economic value of a specific lot. And where it talks about not doing anything within 100 feet of a river, that's where if you've got a large site and you're developing lots, and you have the ability to move those homes away from the river, that's where they'll tell you that you can't do anything within 100 feet. But if you have one specific lot that was laid out prior to 96, there's a different set of guidelines in the Rivers Protection Act that you have to use. And again, we believe we meet those standards. We can strengthen the economic alternative analysis in there. There really isn't much you can do. It either goes in or it doesn't go in. So my own belief is it's going to require a lot of mitigation. I'm certainly listening to my neighbors talk about the birds and things like that, and we have looked into the nesting issues with them, whether we can provide nesting for the birds. It's certainly done all the time. We have no problem doing that. I want them to understand there is no work being done next to the pond here. Okay, it's not a situation where we're going down to the pond. The pond.
Perhaps you want to show the edge of the pond on that.
I wish I could highlight it, but it's actually pretty much off the property.
Right.
It's off of it. The actual edge of the pond is over here. So according to this survey here, none of the edge of the pond is actually on the property. And once you come off that, you get into an area that's full of phragmites, which, again, you get into those phragmites, and the birds have a hard time getting through the phragmites. As a matter of fact, the pictures that I see here are great. I'm assuming that they're in your backyard.
Yes.
Okay, because you don't think you have as much phragmites, so they're able to come to an area and nest in that area because they can actually walk around. So when you get phragmites as tight as they are on the back of this lot, you can't get through them. So it's beneficial if we can actually provide some habitat in that area for them. And that's what we're looking into as well. So I'm certainly taking that into account.
So how much time are we going to need to get a survey done? Should we put this out 4 weeks? I mean, I don't know, can we get a survey done? And what's the next meeting?
The next meeting is March 2nd, and then after that, the 16th. We're back to the 1st and 3rd.
I mean, I don't know how you're making out with stuff, but I'm seeing things taking a while.
Whatever the commission wants. I mean, I want to make sure I get the resource areas right.
Yeah.
So I think we push it to the March 16th.
Okay, I make a motion.
So the folks in the room, we're going to continue this hearing, and we'll be back discussing this on March 16th. At what time?
6:30,
At 6:30, if that works.
the first one.
Want to make a motion?
Yes,
Unfortunately, it doesn't work for me. Not that I'm trying to be difficult with time, but you may or may not know, I drive a school bus, and I'm...
oh yeah, you mentioned that before,
I'm a
so
driver for Severian Brothers, and I pick up all the boys in the...
what time can you get to the meeting?
And the problem with my route is, I have a late run at 5:15, and, you know, that takes the boys that want to stay. So I don't get to Scituate till 7 at the earliest.
Make it 7:15 or 7:30, I don't
Yeah,
care what.
that would be nice, just, you know, if it wasn't for the late run, I could be earlier.
Okay.
But,
There'll be other people lined up before you, so,
They can put us on last, I have no problem with that, if it helps him.
Will we,
okay.
I make a motion
They're all
now.
good boys, by the way.
Well, they got a good bus driver.
Well, they actually do, and Severian Brothers is an excellent school, so if you have sons that are, and Severian Brothers starts, and that's right, Severian Brothers now starts at the 7th grade.
All evidence to the contrary.
You're limited to 10 seconds worth of free press.
All right, so
Okay, I make a motion, we continue 290 Hatherley Road to March 16th at 7:15.
second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your input.
Paul Parrish, could you pass my plan back to me, please?
Oh, yes.
Is it Transect one you too?
No, yes. Yeah, Chad, no.
I think it's Steve. This transect is
Do you
here.
want this with it?
Yeah, I'll leave it with
And
that.
I'll forward those plans as quick
Did
as
you
I
get
can
all his
over
photos back? Did he get it?
the gentleman.
No, I just want to make sure he gets them back.
This is buffer zone, it's not, it said, check all the boxes that apply.
Pat, did you grab that piece on Coastal Bank? You got that, okay. I'll talk to you about it after, let me just leave it here for a minute, and then, before the meeting's over, we'll,
What do we
thank you.
I don't know, you'd have to ask that. I don't
Yeah.
even understand
Land
that
subject to coastal.
crap.
Adams, 108 Edward Foster Road. On February 17th, 2016, at 6:50 PM, the Town Hall of Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 30700, Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws, regarding the application of Michael Adams to elevate a dwelling on property located at 108 Edward Foster Road, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening.
Mike, you have the butter cards for that?
Butter cards? No.
Is this a Bob Crawford?
Yeah, Bob Crawford.
Look inside, they're right there, they're right
You should have
there.
your receipts.
Oh, yep, got them, all set. Do we have DEP number, Carol, too?
I don't know if you guys are on.
Oh, we got it, we got one.
Thanks, Carol.
So,
Fire- Whoever wants to go first.
okay, Michael Adams, live at 429 South Coconut Palm Boulevard in Tavernier, Florida. But this is my house here.
Sure.
So we're requesting that we lift the house currently at 108 Edward Foster, approximately 5 feet 4 inches on its existing foundation. It's actually built on a poured concrete foundation. Upper foundation, roughly elevation. And we're proposing that we go on top of that with block, anchor it in with steel, and fill the block. And on a few locations, if you look at that foundation plan, there's some existing piers. We're proposing to keep the same locations, but replace the piers with something more substantial to take the elevated height. So basically, it's the same house, same footprint, just 5'4". We're proposing to leave the garage intact in place at the current elevation. I'm not proposing to disrupt any of the driveway. And basically, we're just looking to lift it by cutting into the sides of the building. And then inside the interior is currently about 2.5 feet below the exterior grade. So we're proposing that when we lift it, we make the grade uniform under the house to be consistent with the exterior. And then we're putting vents in the front, the rear of the property to allow flow through, which doesn't exist today. It's a solid concrete foundation. And we're putting vents in the back of the garage and the front of the garage to allow, if the tide does go up or storms do come across.
This is by Chilmark's house,
Yeah.
right?
Right across, well, diagonally across.
Okay.
Across from the boat, yeah, or the boat.
Yeah.
Marina, from the
Yeah.
marina. Well, diagonally across
Yeah,
from that as
Chilmark the
well.
horse.
Pat, maybe to start that off, this is on a barrier beach, right? But it's in back of a seawall?
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, typically, if this were a new house or an elevation, they'd be going up on piers. But this is gonna remain,
This is not a high-velocity zone, this is an AO2.
okay, that's...
Yeah, I think the V stops at the wall.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an AO2 currently. The proposed change would bring it to an AE15, which is be largely the same height, because we're roughly at about elevation 14 outside today.
Okay.
So it actually would lower it if-
All right.
with the new one.
Penny?
No, I think it's a good idea.
Joe?
So this is staying in the same footprint?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Just
Yeah.
bringing it
Just
up.
lift it
Same
up.
foundation, they're just gonna add to the top of it.
Yeah.
So there should be minimal disruption, to the property. I know there's lots of sensitivity given where it is. So we're looking to just crib, jack, put blocks in. It's much better than having to dig up, the foundations again. And then where the piers are, we'll have to replace the piers, but that's an area that's kind of already been disrupted before. And
So do we have to bring equipment on the beach and all that?
No.
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 It's all behind the wall.
Okay.
Going down the hill.
I'm good.
Is this the one with the glass?
No questions.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tower?
Yeah.
Formerly Purple Doors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lisa?
No, I got my questions.
Beautiful
Pat?
house.
Mike, have you been to Neil and building with this yet? Oh, yeah. And the garage stays at the elevation, you're doing cutouts in the garage structure?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
And he was okay with block above the existing foundation?
Yep.
Okay, so you'd have it jacked, how would that work? Where would you coming down
We
the
have
driveway?
to cut through the existing foundation at certain spots
Okay.
for the beams to come through, and then we'll block them in and put vents in their place.
It was engineered so that the places where they have to put the beams to lift it, we'll be using those locations to put the vents in.
They're notated on.
They're all shown on the plan.
There was a planting plan for this property in the past, after it got wiped out by a storm. There was a lot of cobble got moved around. And we were going to ask that the plants that were required the first time were replaced. So maybe as part of this project, that could be done. Unless,
We shouldn't be disrupting any of the plantings. They're closer to the seawall behind the walkway.
Right.
But certainly I look to add to that anyway, so anything that we disrupt, we're happy to put. We're talking about largely beach grass between the seawall and...
Well, there was some disturbance maybe before you acquired the property.
There was a washout behind the wall, and I think cobble or something was brought in to fill in that, to help support the wall. But then there were plantings. The house had been abandoned for a while maybe, or not lived in, so...
Not lived in.
Yeah, so there was a lot of plants that were wiped out, but I think...
And there was also a lot of just stuff that washed over under the road and stuff like
Yeah,
that. Not, I think this was before.
Yeah, last week. So I've looked to come back with something of a remediation from the storm at a different date.
Okay.
I just think we talked about kind of what would work there, because, the smaller rounded beach erosion control stones that, the town of Scituate is familiar with, is what was behind there, but they're not substantial enough, and they just roll down, they just go out into the street.
Right.
So I've got to come up with something better for that, but for now, I'm just going to leave it like it is. It did get kind of disrupted. There was a gully on the right side of the property by the wall.
Right.
The left side, the walkway was undermined.
Right.
So I got to come up with something better there.
But I think before your ownership, the former owners had a lot of potted stuff. There was a lot of loose stuff, a lot of things, fencing, stuff got washed into Edward Foster Road. And then someone had come and done some work for them without permission, and they had been instructed to to revegetate and do some other remedial work on the site. And so, to your point, I mean, if you're gonna completed elevating this, and typically we look for some sort of planting, where the town did the seawall down the street,
Yeah.
and they had to disturb an area to work on that. Part of their order of conditions was to revegetate what they disturbed. So I think it's something that we'd look for to know, and it's fine to submit a plan or something like that. We don't need to have it right this minute, but I think we need to know what those are gonna be.
Yeah, well, immediately surrounding the house, there really isn't much of anything but rocks and sand. There is beach grass behind the seawall, which is kind of removed from the area that we'll be working within. It's basically, there's a kind of a spotty lawn on the back, covered with some sand now, but, and in the front, it's a bit of lawn and then a walkway. There's really no kind of planting in the vicinity of the work, but I'll probably have to fix some of the damage the storm has now done to the beach grass, and I'll probably look to plant when it's in season more grass, but that's outside of the area we'll be working anyway. So I was looking to come back, work with Pat, and come up with something to do behind the seawall, which is kind of separate from this.
Okay.
Just to kind of do something that might be more sustainable than...
Yeah, something to stabilize that area would be helpful.
Yeah, maybe some larger size stones, because the 8+ inch stones seem to kind of sit there and do their job. The smaller ones tend to just roll down.
Or get launched.
And I, you know...
Pat, can I, for my own clarification, if there was a outstanding order of conditions for this house, would they have to be considered to do something like this if it's not like a new build? Would that still need to be taken into consideration?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can combine the two things. If there was something asked in the past for planting a stone, and they're coming in with a new project, we could say, you know, if you could complete this as part of it, it would save another filing. And as to the support of the wall, a lot of times we asked if you could find out the original design of the wall, because they might have called for large stones, and if that's the case, you could put some substantial stones in there. Because whatever will work in that type of wall, I think we're in favor of.
But much better. To make it easier for you, you're filing an NOI for this project. If you want to include some of the other work, even if it's rough or whatever, it eliminates your having to file again.
Right.
Which might be helpful. And again, we can close this for the elevation with an understanding that you're going to give us some kind of a planting plan.
Yeah, okay. The planting plan that was part of the order of conditions before is largely complete.
Yeah, okay.
We're not looking to disrupt any, but I'm happy to say
Well, it gives you the
if anything is. But I think it's a good idea that we maybe create something for the work that I need to do to fix the
And then you
seawall.
don't have to file again.
Yeah.
You're done.
And maybe check what the town did for the other end of the seawall, because they were supporting on both sides of the wall.
I think they did put pretty large stone.
It looks like they put riprap on the front face and...
And in back as a sort of a splash over area.
So that's what I'm thinking, something like that, but I wasn't prepared to give you a plan of that.
And I think we can
The storm just happened.
We can do this, but if you could, if we can get that as part of that, I think that's, am I right?
Yeah.
That would work out?
Yeah, that's probably
Okay.
fine.
And your structural engineer thinks this will work?
He does.
Frank?
Yeah, does anybody in the audience want to speak to this? 108 Edward Foster Road?
I make a motion to close.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great.
Best of luck.
Good luck with your project. I want to see that glass tower go up and stay intact.
That's out of here. You gotta see the harbor from that side. It's like through a fishbowl.
Take it easy.
Is this, Pat, these must be some of your, we'll just keep them all.
You can take what you want there.
Okay, this, the next one isn't a hearing, it's a discussion on a possible land swap between town property, Damon Preserve, and a budding owner, Jean and Ann Devotion. I always say it wrong, sorry.
Close enough.
So maybe be good for you to come up to the table here, and I know you have a picture.
There is.
And maybe I'll just start by explaining to the folks in the room, 2 years ago now, that we acquired the piece of property that's shown in red as the Damon property through community preservation funds. And purchased with CPC funds. That land is to be preserved as woodlands. It can be used for passive recreation, for hiking, biking, cross-country skiing, that sort of thing. There may also be some habitat-type work, habitat enhancement. Maybe there'll be eventually a firewood program or some light forestry-type use on that piece of property. So maybe from there, and then the town has looked to improve this property by means of some access for use of the property, additional trails, parking, ways to get into the site. At that point, Gene and Ann approached Conservation Commission and requested that they consider, the town consider, exchanging a piece of property that came with the Damon property for a larger piece of property that they own at the back of the property, and it's shaded in blue. And it abuts the South Swamp and also at the end of Conservation Way. And if anybody can't see that or wants to move around, or maybe we want to turn the easel just a little bit, it's a little small, but we can point some things out. So the piece that Gene and Ann are proposing is about 3 acres of taking a piece of town land that would be 3 acres, and in exchange giving approximately 9 acres to the town of surveyable land. They've also offered additional pieces of property that they have deeds to, but are difficult to survey.
We have not done that yet.
Okay. So maybe you want to point out a little bit, if you want to just kind of highlight where that piece is, would be helpful.
Sure. The current, our house is right in here, the green land. The land we're talking about is part of the Damon Preserve, this yellow land. We own off of Conservation Lane. This is 9 acres, which we have bothered to get surveyed. And then there's additional property, approximately 5 acres. And then another piece of land that's a wood lot somewhere between this land and the Crosby farmland, which the town also owns. So all that land would be included in the swap. So all deeds we have to any land in this back area would be exchanged with the town for this front land. And originally we approached the town because we were going to sell this. It's under Chapter 61A, and we were going, we had to present it to the town, so we went to Conservation, Selectmen, the Assessor's Office, and a few other people, and told them of our intent. The Selectmen at that point came up with the idea that there wasn't enough money in the budget to potentially buy it, but the idea of a swap. And that's where we are right now. So I guess if you wanted to have a public hearing to let everybody ask questions.
Correct. I think yep, I think that's helpful, and I can point out a few pieces.
One other thing that I believe 2 select people and 2 Conservation Commission people have walked the land, and also Frank knows it very well, so that we have walked it.
What we typically do would ask members to ask questions, and then we'll move to the audience. And when we get to the audience, we just ask that you state your name and address. So,
first, here we go. Okay, I am in favor of a swap, but I feel as though we need to have access off of Clap Road. And I would like to cut this down so we still could get a road in on the yellow, which it's yellow on mine, I don't know what it is up there, I
Kind
can't.
of a light green.
Yeah, have some of that.
Just so everybody understands, the area that's shaded in yellow right now is part of the Damon parcel and would essentially be red, but that's the part that Gene and Ann would like to acquire in that swap.
Okay, but I feel as though we need to have an entrance on Clap Road, okay? Hopefully, we're gonna have some land across the street in the near future, and we will have walkers, and they could come across, or they could park their car and go over there or over here. The problem with this other entrance on Clap Road, it's all wetlands. It's very, very wet there. That is not at all conducive to have a driveway go in there. So my feeling is, what I would like to see is to, I'm not saying we couldn't swap this, but give us enough room to get our road in to the parking area, because I don't know where the parking area would exactly be, but it would be on this edge over here. So we would have the access from Clap Road. All right, and I understand that we could come in this way on Conservation Way. That's a little tricky, you know, with a very developed neighborhood with lots of children in it. And that is my only concern. Otherwise, it's great, but we cannot come in down here. It's too wet. We just can't.
Penny, I think to be clear, it's wet, but it's not a wetland.
Right.
It's drainage.
Yeah, but okay, but that's not where
Right.
we
There's a
want
lot of
it.
water that spills from there during storm events.
So it looks wet
because
to
of the
me.
stone wall, but I don't believe it's a wetland.
Okay, but it is wet.
Yep.
We would, I would,
we won't
you know,
disagree.
I'm talking, what, 10, 15 feet to get one car in on the farther side of it.
Bill?
I want to echo Penny's sentiments. I'm very much in favor of the idea of this. I think to get as much contiguous land under the town's stewardship is a very good idea, and thereby preventing any further development. However, access is key. It is hurting us in some other areas, not having access. So I think that if we could reach some kind of compromise that works for both parties and gain access, I think that would be a step in the right direction, and I would be in favor of it.
I'm totally in favor of it, but I do agree that there really needs to be more than one access, and if there's one on Conservation, there really should be one on Clap Road somehow to get into the property, so that it'll get more use.
I couldn't make the walk the day that you folks walked it. I think Paul did.
Yeah.
Who else got out that Maura?
Maura, John, Danny.
John went.
Okay. All right. Paul?
Echoing the same thing, it could be a potential win-win deal. It's a beautiful piece of land, but the one detractor is if you're losing an access point.
Okay. Lisa?
I agree with everyone. Just need the access to Clap Road, and it works.
I'm going to open it up to the audience, but maybe before I do, I just want to, maybe Gene was pointing out some pieces, and I just want to make sure everybody understands just where it is, like where Clap Road. So this is Clap Road. This is pretty much the edge of the South Swamp. Conservation Way, Colonel Mansfield Drive, it's a little dead end. This is Gene and Ann's property now, extends back here, and then this is the piece that they're proposing to exchange for this yellow piece right here.
if that helps a little bit, and maybe I'll just stay here.
For the yellow?
Blue.
The blue, I'm sorry, the blue is the piece that they own now.
We would be giving that up.
That's coming to the town of Scituate, 9 acres, in exchange for 3 acres right here. So it's a 3-to-1 exchange. Yes, ma'am. And so your name and address?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Carla Nee, 91 Club Road. Is the green area, is that where the lumber road is that goes behind Club Road? Lumber road? There's like a trail.
That trail goes in about right here.
Okay.
That's on the Damon property.
All right.
The Damon property.
Okay.
It's conservation property now.
Okay, and what would you plan on doing with the yellow area?
Just making it one contiguous piece of property to our own property.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So, James Fletcher, to Conservation Way.
I'm sorry, last name?
Fletcher, Conservation Way. So a couple of questions. Can you define the use of the word access? That's my first
So
question.
the word access.
Yeah, using the word access, what do you mean by that?
Trails to go in and out of the property so that people can
Walking
use it
trails?
for hiking, walking, that sort of thing. We also have, in acquiring these pieces of property, looking to make access available for people in the whole town. So we're, in many cases, creating some sort of entrance and a parking area. So we need to also create that for this piece of property.
Okay, well, and so when you say access potentially on Clap Road or access potentially on Conservation Way, to what parcel of land are you talking about?
Well, right now, without owning this piece, the access to the Damon Preserve is here and here. As Penny pointed out, this is a wet area that would take some development to make that an access area. People need to park off the street to use this. So we need to create a drive-in and some parking. This would require a fair amount of work as it has drainage issues on it. It's wide enough to make a driveway and parking. Right now, there was a road that the former owner used for logging, and that's where most people have walked in, and would be a potential location for parking and access. And then, if we were to make this swap, there'd be the opportunity to come in from the end of Conservation Way to hike and walk, and also the possibility of a parking area at Conservation Way, if it seemed a prudent thing to do. We're creating this year parking off of Booth Hill Road at the end of Higgins McAllister for 3 or 4 cars. We're going to create a parking area up Bates Lane for a dozen or so cars, and a parking area on the Crosby piece that we acquired for multiple cars and a school group. Everybody in the town of Scituate pays for this through the community preservation piece on the taxes, and so they should have the opportunity to utilize the property as well. And so we would look to create some small area on the property where people could park and then go about hiking or whatever. It's not a road. We're not creating a road between Clap Road. There will be trails. What we'd like to do is create a nice trail network, and in acquiring this property, it would allow that to happen. I grew up over here, so I know that there's already a lot of cart paths that exist in here that could simply be opened up again, and would allow for that type of activity. This isn't, it's not a racetrack, there's no motorcycles, it's hiking, maybe mountain biking, cross-country skiing, that sort of thing, but not a heavy use.
So the only other, I guess this is more of a comment, I mean, obviously, I live on Conservation Way, I'm not, I think I understand the rationale behind it, but I just have a general observation, sitting listening, that the land was donated to the town.
The town purchased the property from the Damon family at a reduced price, so the Damons wanted the land to go to the town, they sold it to the town for less money than possibly they could use that for, and it was, therefore wasn't developed.
under the assumption the town would preserve it,
That's correct.
but now the town's thinking about doing land swap.
If I could speak to that.
I'm just,
Sure. No, that's-
again, I'm not asking it, I'm just trying to get the lay of the land.
There's a reason for having this meeting is for folks to understand why this is happening. Just the reason that I think the commission has discussed this for a fairly lengthy period of time. The reason for acquiring these pieces is that once we own them, they'll never be developed. In this particular case right now, should they choose not to swap this land, that piece of property is still open to development. So the alternative to not exchanging that piece of property would be the potential for conservation way to be extended and possibly more houses. And we don't have all the information on that.
That's what I was trying to draw out, is that ultimately the gain, obviously for the people who live, like myself, on Conservation Way, is to say, oh, this looks like it might be a good thing for the town, people get to use the land and...
Depends if you want more neighbors or not.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, I don't think anybody on Conservation Land Way wants more neighbors.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's open land, right, but, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I speak to the history for a second?
Sure.
We own, Ann and I owned a lot of this land in here before, and we traded it with Mr. Damon before this became, he had a tree farm, and our land was blocking, connecting his property. So we traded land contiguous to us for the Damon property. And it was, it made for a nicer whole lot. So there is history of this being traded back and forth.
Craig Hoffman, 53 Carmenville Drive. I just want to know, for some reason it's not marked up right there, between the blue and the orange, whose land is that?
So your house is right here.
Correct, whose land is behind me then?
When I've talked to the surveyors, that piece is in question. There's a piece, I've spent some time with the surveyors, a fellow by the name of Terry McGovern, very competent surveyor, has tried to do his best to survey these pieces. A lot of these pieces are old woodlots that were swapped with families, marked with different bounds, and right now they're showing these as owners, either owners unknown or some questionable ownership on those pieces, quite clearly.
Okay, so but if you make the swap of the land, will there be walking trails through there because we don't know actually whose land that is?
That's also wetland in there, so I don't think that...
So there wouldn't be any walking trails through
It
there?
would not be conducive, like in back of your house, it's pretty wet.
Correct, I just know to be walking past the back of my house, because it is actually, to the right of my house, it actually is very dry on that section of, so there is plenty of walking areas around there. I just didn't know if that land that we don't know whose land it actually is, would that actually someday...
We couldn't construct any trails on property that the town doesn't.
Okay, so there'll never be any trails there.
Well, it depends on ultimately what's sorted out with that piece of property. But one of the things, if we're going to create trails, we want to create those trails within the woods. In other words, we don't really want those trails to be right on the edge of somebody's property. It's no fun to be walking along a stone wall with a lawn on one side.
Correct.
We want those trails to be inland. And there's actually some really good cart paths that travel through here now.
Yes.
And so we would probably follow, to great extent, the cart paths that are already there. I know one of them happens to almost come right into your dad's backyard from years ago, but that's pretty much non-operational, and it wouldn't go that way. So,
because the land off of conservation, I mean, that was purchased back in the early 80s, correct? Was that early 80s?
The land off of conservation.
The blue right there, when was that's land,
That
that's been your land forever, correct?
No, well, right now, this belongs to Gene and Ann.
Correct. So that was land that was supposed to be built at some time, but never...
We just never chose, we always had it under 61A, so we never chose to develop it, we kept it as preservation. but it paid taxes on it.
No, it's a nice piece of property right there.
Well, it's all really nice, but to your
Yeah.
point is, and Gene's, that this is an isolated wetlands. We had a hearing when you constructed your property, so that we know that there's a large isolated wetland in this area.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
I'm Earl Owen, 28 Conservation Way. My interest in this is the development at the end of Conservation Way, and it's a very simple thing. There are numerous smaller vernal ponds in that area, numerous. It is a known habitat for spotted salamanders, newts, there are fox dens, coyote dens. There's a lot of protected wildlife in there. And when I read about this in the paper, I understand what Gene wants to do, and I don't see a problem with what he wants to do. What my problem is, what do you do with the end of Conservation Way? Because I question that you could put a road in there, wide enough with one vehicle without destroying those vernal pools and those protected habitats.
And if they're there, then we can't.
Because that land, I don't think you knew about it. I watched it for years. We'd laugh about it. But every spring, 2 to 4 groups come down Conservation Way and wander out through the woods because they got a deal going with somebody that they're going to develop a project out there. And I say the same thing to them every time. You sure you own the land? Well, that's a problem for lawyers. It was a problem for the 4 groups that came last year. They didn't get it solved, or the year before that. It's every year. And they'll be out again this year. Because there used to be a guy that his mother would go out there and cut holly branches. And she wasn't of a good mind, but he had a little problem with places he hung out. And they'd talk to him in the bars in Hull, and he would sell them on this idea, and they would buy him drinks. And he didn't own a damn thing.
He was peddling a couple of bridges, too.
I think he was good at it. But the point being...
I never got any drinks. What happened?
You hung out with the wrong guy. You should have hung out with Crazy Eddie. My concern is that at the end of Conservation Way, if you think of extending that street, I question you can even find enough place to park 4 cars once you pass the rock wall.
Well, this isn't a hearing about a subdivision.
No. This is about a land swap. And part of the land swap is to create access from Conservation Way. And I'm saying, be very cautious there, because I don't think you're going to find there's much of an access point.
Well, I mean, to be more specific, that's theoretical.
Right.
Right. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
You know what opinion?
No, it's theoretical.
No, that, I meant...
Theoretical, that would, yeah.
That would look to gain an entrance at the end of Conservation Way, that would be theoretical.
I can almost guarantee, at a minimum, the commission would look to extend any sort of trails that we developed to Conservation Way. So people from Conservation Way, First Parish Road, Colonel Mansfield, Sylvester, could walk to the end.
And there is a trail that does that. There is an old trail. He used to call it the hippie trail. I think he still does.
So that's basically what this is about. We want to make, Laura?
Mike, I just want to share what my concern was with the project. And it's beautiful land. I walked it. It's terrific. And we've talked about this, because the original yellow piece of land really was orange, it was Damon property. I feel it's disingenuous to be swapping out land that we just bought from the Damon family, who really wanted to preserve that land. And you have expressed several times the Damon family was in favor of this, and I really would love to see that, and see that proof.
Well, I've had a discussion, in fact, that Damon is here, and she and I have talked about this. We've looked at the map. I've showed her my thoughts as to why we should consider part of the swap or whatever.
And that's important for me.
And I think it is for myself as well, that this is something that needs to be fully vetted and brought to the table, that we can meet our commitment as we did. That we purchased this property and it was discussed whether it would be ball fields or anything else. And I know when I talked to Deb, the question was, I think everybody had assumed that there would be an entrance onto the property in this location. So that's a piece that
that we're discussing here this evening. Yes, sir.
Hi, Rick Woodland, 76 Clap Road.
I'm sorry, your name again?
Rick Woodland, 76 Clap Road. That piece that we're talking about, the first thing I said, the first question I have is, if you're taking a look at this deal and someone's saying it's 9 acres or 3 acres, what's the value of the 9 acres versus the 3 acres? It sounds to me like the blue property is a hell of a lot less valuable than property that's right on Clap Road, that's buildable. So it's not like a 3-to-1 deal, it's a 100-to-1 deal. You got unbuildable land versus land that's valuable.
Well, it all depends on how you value the land.
Well, so there's gotta be a way to value it.
Well, I think that's
Well, if you're talking about commercial development, that would be one thing, in terms of the value
We don't know
to.
what's gonna happen to that property in the future, but the potential of the property, if you're considering a swap, you ought to be considering the value of A versus B.
Which they have walked the land intentionally with us to establish that.
So
You're assuming that the 3 acres is buildable too.
Which it isn't.
I'm asking the question, what's the value of the land?
Right, and that's a fair question. Are we getting good value for that? If it takes place, is there good value for that exchange? And that's why we should be doing this in a transparent
How much is the plus?
meeting, which is what we're
It's
doing.
not, it's 8.9.
In looking at the layout of this land and what it was, this is approximately the edge of the South Swan. So even if you take a buffer zone into account from that swan, if access could be made from Conservation Way, then a road could be constructed and someone could build another home or whatever. Even if it was one home that were constructed in here, I think that almost makes the value reasonable. We could certainly get an appraisal, and we probably should, of the properties. We've already had an appraisal done of this piece, because to buy it with community preservation money, we had to have that property appraised.
So the piece that you want to swap is the blue piece, and it's really hard to see the color there. Is
That little light shaded is the piece that the town now owns.
Okay, and that goes all the way to the little strip of orange there that connects to Clap?
No.
This is the piece that is right now as part of the Damon Preserve, is this piece right here.
See how it looks like
There's
it's
two
kind of like a
homes between
highlighter
those two.
yellow kind of color.
Could you actually write on that, maybe? Could you
Well,
actually?
I'll tell you what, we have another copy, and we can hand it to you.
Hey Frank, do we know what the plus, so we're saying it's 8.9 acres plus, ... Do we know what theoretically, the amount of plus acres are?
It really depends on, that survey line, as the engineer explained it to me, the survey lines along the South Swan can vary. And that essentially is
Where we're saying,
the line.
yeah, right.
So that could change something from 8.9, 8.95 to maybe 9.3, depending on how that line.
Oh, so it would be less than, the plus would be less than an acre,
The
certainly.
plus, though, the deeds we would be giving are about, it would be an additional about 8 acres.
They have deeds.
Plus.
Plus.
That's the question I was asking, so.
Yeah, we are
Because we were
giving-
talking about the 9 plus, so
Plus,
when we're
we-
factoring,
We are giving all the land.
yeah, when we're talking about gross value, we need to consider all of that,
If
yeah.
I could just show one more piece, you spoke about this piece of land. We were approached several years ago by a developer, and this is what they wanted us to buy into. This is Conservation Way right here, this is the property. These are Unit 1, Unit 2, these are double units, which is what they were proposing at the time. And they brought in engineers and things like that. We did not choose to go this way because we didn't want to see it all developed. But they felt very certain this was how many homes they could get out of the property.
Yes, sir.
Tom Poulos, 35 Colonel Mansfield Drive. Tom Poulos. Thank you. I think I came a little late, and I just read something in the paper about this meeting. So this is, you said before, this has been going on for some time, this discussion? How long has this discussion been going on?
There was a meeting with the selectmen
September?
in September, and then the Conservation Commission had an informal meeting.
So prior to September, this has never been brought up
That's correct.
That's
with the
why now-
commission or with the selectmen?
No, in July, he brought it.
So I think, I didn't read anywhere that, what is your motivation for the swap? I find it, 9 to 3, kind of difficult to
I think it's,
process.
The town
It's not, I'm asking them what their motivation is.
We own this back land. We've been here, bought the house in 1978. We bought it from the Rachel Merritt Priestman, who lived across the way. And their ancestors bought this land in British pound sterling. And originally, when they sold us the house, they were very worried that we were going to bulldoze it down and develop it. So they didn't sell us all the land. After they got to know us, about 5 or 6 years later, they sold us all the back land. And it's been kept like that ever since. I go in there with my tractor every once in a while, and I cut wood and things like that. We also let some of the people who live in the neighborhood walk it and occasionally hunt with bow and arrows on our property, not any of the other property. And it would just give us a buffer zone, and also it would move all our land to one contiguous piece. Easier to take care of. I'm not getting any younger. If I go out and cut for a couple hours in the woods, I don't feel so good the next day,
But nobody's using that property now anyway, right?
Yeah, but we're at the point in time where we'd like to consolidate. We're just not going to do nothing with it. And we were thinking of developing it, and part of being under 61A is the town has first right of refusal. So we talked to everybody in the town we could find, because it doesn't exactly say who you should talk to, and talk to them about what our intentions were. And there wasn't a whole lot of money to buy the land, because they just purchased the Damon land. They said, what about a swap? And originally, it was going to be 9 acres for 5 acres, and the chair of the selectmen said, I don't like those numbers, why don't we make it, I think it's much fairer. It's 3 acres for the 9 acres. But it would be nice to see it all as one preserve. I mean, we know the Damons, we helped with all the research that went into clearing up that land. It's not like we were opposed to it, we were very in favor of it. And
I think having the buffer would give you your own privacy.
Yeah, 'cause-
And it will all be contiguous. And I understand that living next to conservation. So you can probably appreciate our concern that we like our privacy, and it's been a great little area. A lot of young families have been moving over the last 40 years that I've been in there. And to have traffic down there, you have to understand our position, that we like our privacy, and we'd like to maintain what we consider a great neighborhood.
yeah, we've never kind of opened up the lane going right out to the road to give people privacy too. But it's at the point now where if we sell it, the next people who develop, whether they're developers or whoever, they're going to do whatever they want with the land. And that's up to them. Our first choice was to talk.
Well, on that point, if the town gave you the 3 acres, would you stipulate in your deed that you can't develop that land?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
Because it's our land. Would you do a deal like that for your own land?
I would never, first of all, sell it to a developer.
Why? We
Because
didn't.
I happen to love that area and this town.
That's not
preserve it the way
fair.
it is,
What's their motivation?
not to develop it.
This upfront land, this upfront land is not anywhere near you, you realize that.
It doesn't matter, I'm a Scituate resident, and I pay taxes.
This is-
And I'd be more than willing to spend more money to buy the property.
Okay, if you want to do
Shouldn't
that,
be
that's
going
fine,
here.
but the point is that this land is up for sale. It will be. We haven't put it on the public market yet. We have kept all that land and paid taxes on it so you could enjoy it and other people could. And now it's time that we're going to make some changes. And we'd like to consolidate our land. We thought it was a very good proposal when we eventually fleshed out the deal. And if you wanted to buy it, that's your...
Yeah, I think from an abutter standpoint, Mrs. Snow, and I don't know what our options are, to tell you the truth, of what avenues we have to pursue this. We want to maintain our privacy in that area. We don't want a lot of traffic. and we don't want to upset the neighborhood, period. Where we go from there, I have no idea. This has never happened to us before. And maybe that's why we look at the commission to tell us what our options are at this point. If they want to continue doing what they're doing, that's fine. That's their legal right to do that. I would just want to make sure that they protect the town and its people who are abutting the area, so that it doesn't disrupt them or the vernal pools and everything else around there.
Sure.
Well, I think,
What are our options
I
going
think it's
forward?
important that you know that this still have to go to, Frank, correct me if I'm wrong, it still have to go to town meeting, and it would also have to go to the state.
I think it has to go to the selectmen. The Board of Selectmen would, we have care and custody of this
Right.
commission. If we endorse that, we would go to the Board of Selectmen, then the Board of Selectmen would make an article at town meeting. Town meeting would have to vote this, and then it would have to go to the legislature because it was already purchased with CPC money. So
Right.
it's
So I think it's important that everybody knows that this is, it's not just this transaction, that it has to go a lot,
You guys have all
a lot of steps.
endorsed it.
Well, we have.
No. We
haven't.
Well, I thought you
That's
guys
what-
all.
no, this is what we're discussing right now.
What we're trying to do is put out the pros and cons of this so that everyone understands, because it is going to go through a process, and hopefully by the time we're done, people will have the opportunity to look at it and decide what they think is best for the town. To the point of Conservation Way being secluded and private and not much traffic, when land is purchased by the town, by all the people in the town, it's my feeling that it should also be able to be used by all the people in the town. One of the things that the commission's been criticized for is not getting some of our open space accessible quick enough. We've been in the works of creating a parking lot up Bates Lane, part of the Crosby property, other pieces that were required. I've been letting the town use a piece of my property on Clap Road to park on so people could get up Bates Lane, because I think it is important that folks be able to use it. All of you buy this land, the Damon piece, with your community preservation dollars, and you should be able to access it. It's also important to save it for water resources, wildlife, and all that. But I think it's important that people are able to access what they purchase. We have to do all of that responsibly. We can't just walk into someone's neighborhood and say, well, we're going to wind up with a parking area here that you didn't have before. I understand what you're saying, that you have to be sure that that's addressed. With all the pieces that we've done so far, we've had to work with the police to talk about security, we have to talk to the fire department. There's been a whole bunch of discussion that has gone on with that. When we had the discussion about access on Bates's Lane, there was a couple of people that have lived there for years without much traffic. But the alternative before that was done is that that was going to be a subdivision. And the road going into that piece of property would have had lots of cars every day, as opposed to a few people that are going in to go hiking. So we don't even know if there's going to be a parking area at Conservation Way. That's not what we're discussing tonight. We're trying to get to the point of whether we even consider exchanging this land. I think what's important to look at is what the town acquired is they're proposing 9 acres, but in addition to that, they have deeds to about another 8 acres, which are loose woodlots in the South Swamp, which is pretty common. They're just not well defined. They were exchanged from family to family without good definition, but essentially they're offering another deeds to about another 8 acres on top of the 9 acres that are here. We would obviously have to make sure that the 9 acres had good value, that it was enough uplands, that it assessed high enough to be worthwhile. That's would be part of our process. And/or if they had entertained selling the land to the town through community preservation. But community preservation pays about $20,000 an acre. Developers are paying a lot more than that. So it's been the commitment of folks like the Damons that are willing to sell a large undeveloped piece for a lot less money because it's important for them to preserve.
So Frank, can I ask again? So
Sure.
I thought I heard, I thought that the board was, it sounded like you were in favor because you're tying up the land down the end of Conservation Way.
It seems to
Is
us
that
that
right?
would be, it seems like it would be a good idea. When we have any hearing, any piece, the idea is to vet all these concerns, and then everybody make a good decision.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a sense for what you guys think, because to Tom's point, I mean, this got sprung on us. If I didn't receive the note, thank God, and I appreciate it, because I'm a butter.
Yep.
We wouldn't have known about it.
And that's
But
why we did that.
Yeah, which I appreciate. So I'm trying to get more of a sense for, from what you've heard to this point, is that why you think, or at least you feel as if it may be a good thing for the neighborhood, to Tom's point, because there would be no development that would go in there? Or is there potential down the road for you guys to turn around and do another land swap when somebody comes in and that land goes away? I mean, I don't know. That's what I'm trying to assess whether it's a good thing for the community.
And I'm Greg Owen, I live at 28 Conservation Way, and just my
Sure,
point is
I'm not
correct.
gonna, I get what you're saying. Let's kind of roll through, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
My point ties in directly to.
And I'm sorry, your name and address?
Greg Owen, 28 Conservation Way, and that is that there are butters identified on this map currently as unknown. So.
There's a piece of land right here.
Yeah.
That we're not entirely sure who owns that piece.
Right. So now, wouldn't it be fair to have that sorted out before we make any land swap? There are butters as well. We don't know what happens, after the land swap. If it turns out that ownership has been somehow exchanged and it creates a problem down the road. I just think the state mandates that you're obligated to notify us as abutters.
We would have to notify abutters a hearing on the wetlands project. We aren't obligated to do, we did this as a service and transparency for the town. That's the reason that you were all notified. We wanted everyone that might be impacted by this.
I'm trying to say too, shouldn't those abutters be notified as well?
If they can be determined, the town doesn't have, they're not taxing that property right now. Go ahead.
If I can speak a little bit, Steve Bjork, and I have a couple of questions as well, but to your comment, the requirement for notifying abutters is to go to the tax collector's office, take the numbers, map, block, and parcel numbers off the tax collector's office. If something's incorrect with yours, it's your responsibility to make sure that you're right on the list. So if it's an owner unknown, it's very common in the West End to have, there used to be tons of owner unknown in the West End. I own most of them, okay? That could be mine, I have no idea. But it's very common to have that, okay? Frank, you were about to say it's not taxed, okay? There's a lot of people that pay taxes, just like myself, on parcels of land that I don't know where they are. So I very well could be paying taxes on that piece. I don't know if I am or I'm not, but I probably have 50 acres or better out in the South Swamp area of different parcels I've collected over the years. So I think the notification that Frank's talking about, he's right. They did it for your benefit to bring as many people in as they could that would be potentially affected by this. But they don't have a responsibility to find an owner unknown. And I can tell you, you could spend 15 years trying to find that owner unknown and go back to 1706 when the land was given away and probably still not come up with the correct boundaries for that particular piece of property.
And you know because you've spent 15 years researching things like that.
I spent, since I was 20 years old, researching the west end of the town of Situate.
That's
more than 15 years.
That's my concern.
But again, the obligation for him...
If Steve knew that he already owned that, it wouldn't be significant.
I would tell you, if I knew I owned it, I'd tell you I owned it.
I know,
It
you'd
wouldn't
be a
affect
semi-hearing.
Yeah. But as far as the swap goes, Mara kind of had it right. My big thing was, are the Damons on board with this? I mean, the Damons...
They're right here.
For some reason, I don't know why, and correct me if I'm wrong, they could have made the land swap originally when you were swapping other pieces, right? They could have given you that piece in the front before it went to the town. So I just want to make sure that they're happy that that piece is going to you, because that's huge. If they did give the land for preservation, if there's a chance it may get developed in the future, if the DuBoisans decide they want to do something else, 10 years down the road or 20 years down the road, which is fine, I don't have a problem with that, okay? I know we heard earlier tonight that when you put a conservation restriction on the land, it's in perpetuity? Is that, okay, perpetuity means forever. Sometimes things aren't forever, and sometimes things change. And even if the regulation says one thing, sometimes you do other things, okay? So we're looking now to remove a conservation restriction from that piece?
There's no
No, there isn't anything on it yet.
Not yet.
Okay, all right, well, I feel good about that.
Yeah.
That makes it a little bit simpler.
Do you want to speak to that?
I like.
So you have to understand the same thing applies potentially to that land that the town would take ownership of. If you go with your assumption, then I could argue the same point. And that was my point earlier.
And you did.
Right,
You did.
which is why I think, look, to me, the whole thing sounds very interesting and complex at the same time, right? Which is why we're here, but I'm still a little bit confused about the whole process and the reality as to whether or not this, this could take place, and if it was to take place, how long would it be? I mean, I have a whole host of questions about it.
Sure. In my uneducated opinion, I don't think that you're gonna see houses on that parcel, but I don't think it's gonna be a bad thing to see a small parking lot there. It doesn't get used that much, and if they put it further out into the woods so it's not directly against somebody's house, that's kind of what's gonna happen on Bates Lane. I don't think they wanna put it right at the very end, so if they can put it out into the woods some, I don't think it's gonna be a bad thing.
I have a question more directed towards the actual map itself. Where on this map is that piece of land that has just recently been cleared on Clap Road? Where in relation?
It's between the orange and the green.
It's between the orange and the green. Okay.
Right here.
And
It's right there.
That owner's here
okay.
tonight.
What's
That
that?
owner is here tonight. The owner of that property is
Oh,
here
okay,
tonight.
because we own the other side of that logging road that goes into
Okay.
that. So my concern is, it's been, the answer to this question has been skirted around. If the trade goes through, you will receive that yellow piece of property. The Conservation Commission is gonna ask you to put a road through there, and with the exception of that one road, your lands will be consolidated. What are your specific plans for the future for that consolidated land?
They don't have.
Same thing we've been doing.
Okay,
Enjoy it.
I paid taxes on it. Because you have that other piece of land, I'm
The
coming
same-
into this fresh, we
We
didn't even
haven't
receive a
developed that
notification of
piece.
this meeting.
The one clarification I think would be good is when you talk about putting a road in there, that's kind of a scary term. These are cart paths back in there.
Yes,
And I don't see these being changed.
but this being a new topic to the public.
Wait, no, we gotta do one at a time so that everybody's clear on this, sorry.
It's just, this being a new topic for the public, that wasn't clear, because we're coming into this not knowing anything. So that wasn't clear that you were going to keep that as sort of like your version of conservation land. I didn't know if you were going to take this piece of land and start developing on it, like you had mentioned with that other.
In fairness.
No, it's right next to our house, basically, that entrance
Okay.
is within a stone's throw from our
Okay.
house.
In fairness to Gene and Ian, they've owned this properties for a long time as well, and they've opted not to do this. They've been offered by developers to buy different pieces and instead have kept the swap going to keep it open. And I think that their concern is still to see
Okay.
that this property remains preserved, including the blue piece
Right.
that's there.
Okay.
So they're
That
asking-
wasn't made completely clear when it comes to those
Well,
pieces of
like
land on
the
Sure.
property.
Okay.
Can we hear from?
Mr. Harrison's been waiting for a while.
Frank, when I asked the question, I'm on the board of selectmen, when I asked the question why they were doing this, it's because he didn't want people going by his property to access the Damon property. That's what you told me, right, to my face.
I said privacy, and I said we have a lot of people.
Wandering on your property or near your property line and so forth. And I asked the question, great, put a deed restriction on it, and you said absolutely not, you wouldn't do that. if it was developable, if it was, you know, such prime property, why did they stop Conservation Way where they did?
Because that's what they
No, I'm
own.
not asking you, I'm not asking you. I don't-
But you don't want an answer to your question.
I'm just,
Yeah, let's do this, you know, so that the question
there's a
is,
reason they didn't continue Conservation Way.
if I remember, Sean, and when I was, and I don't know the true answer to that, and we do know that in many cases, development started prior to the Wetlands Protection Act and then stopped. We know that there's roads in town that have been developed, but now houses were built off of them because there's wetlands all around them. My recall with Conservation Way was that it was at a pretty tough time. Don LeClaire was the developer of Mansfield Road, Conservation Way.
No. There were two developers. Bob Jr. was in there also.
Bob Jr. built a lot of the houses, but I think Don LeClaire was the original developer for that property, and I think that he went bankrupt when he was building that subdivision, and then other builders came in and finished that. I'm pretty sure that that was the case that happened, and I don't believe that that piece of property was part of the Mansfield family were the owners of all that land on First
Move
Park
this
Road.
along.
And I don't believe that the Mansfield family was the owner of that blue parcel.
And just one final thing,
If I could speak to your question first. This ended right here because they didn't own this. It also ended right here, and the Hoffmans purchased 5 acres there. They built one house over here and then another house over here. So that to imply in any way that they stopped because it wasn't buildable isn't truthful. The reason why they stopped is they didn't own over there. And this is higher land over here than over there.
I was just referring to Conservation Way, why they didn't continue that.
Because they didn't own it.
Okay, all right, and for many years it hasn't been developed. We just heard from a developer that said it wouldn't be that easy to be developed.
Well, I think it wasn't developed because it's been in Chapter 61 for...
Okay, and that's another question someone asked earlier about, you know, and he said because he wanted to do the right thing. 61A is he doesn't have to pay taxes because it's a farm status. And then to get it out, he has to pay.
You still pay
You still pay
taxes.
taxes.
Not like you would
No, but-
if it was done in
It's different.
61A, let's just be clear. And then finally, why did, someone mentioned it earlier, we had how many discussions, you were in front of us, Frank, why didn't they, you know, talk to us then? Tony wanted ball fields, and that, you know, to Debbie and Billy's point, they wanted it to remain the way it was, and you were on board as well. Why didn't they talk to the Damons at that time? Someone mentioned it earlier, you know, so we convinced town meeting that this is gonna stay the way it is. And now I'm very uncomfortable changing it, taking a piece.
Okay.
Or make the offer, I heard it tonight for the first time, if we're gonna get land down the street from the Livingston property, which is almost across the street to access to this property. So would these people be willing to put a, you know, gravel road so people can access, you know, the property? That's something I heard for the first time tonight.
Okay.
Can you show us what the Livingston property is that everybody talks about across the street from us? Because as far as I know, the Leaches own the property across the street from us.
This is access.
No,
This-
this
All right,
land.
so here's, I would say the Hunters, and this was Newcomb's, but the different owners since then.
Still don't see it.
But right here, there's a narrow strip that goes in, and there's a cemetery right here.
Merritt
The
Cemetery.
Merritt Cemetery. Beyond the Merritt Cemetery is a large piece of land, and they've been calling it Bartlett's Field. This was a land swap that developer came to the Board of Selectmen and to town meeting and requested that the town give them frontage on 3A. In exchange, they would give the town a large piece of open space here, just outside of this map,
Okay.
all right? There's
Pretty far back there.
It's back, but this is, the access is this narrow way that goes,
Lane with a stone wall.
that goes to the
To
cemetery.
get into
Right?
it.
Right.
So if that swap should take place, it was voted to do that, but I don't think all of
Actually,
that.
it's done.
So the swap
Senate,
is,
yeah, the Senate approved it as
Okay.
well.
so that piece of land will come to the town of Scituate. If we were to extrapolate this map, you'd have the town forest out at 3A. There's open land that came to the town through the Whitcomb Pines development. And then there's a hiking trail right now that goes from the town forest through the back end of Whitcomb Pines, and it comes out on Clap Road, across from like number 11 Clap Road. There's a small kiosk from a Boy Scout trail that actually pops out there. It's never been utilized, but it was a requirement of the Whitcomb Pines project to create a walking trail. That walking trail could be changed a little bit, and that trail could come out behind the Merritt Cemetery. And so, in a sense, people could walk, make a huge loop coming from the town forest through that piece of property, out this way, and then up the street and back in to the Damon property, and then they could continue on. Well, I mean, what we've been trying to do is create contiguous pieces of land. And that's one of the reasons to consider this, because it expands on contiguous. Maura?
So thank you, I'd just like to make 2 points. And I don't know, Pat, if this is something that we go through you, or my concern is, the land court decision of swapping a piece of land that we bought with public funds to go into conservation status, and then swapping that and taking it out of conservation status. I don't have any experience with that, and I personally would like to see some sort of opinion from our council to tell us what that would entail.
I think it has to be.
That's number, yes, that's number 1. Oh, God, and of course, number 2 is, okay. That's something you were just saying. Oh, crap.
Well, we can come back to
that was number 1.
Don't forget number 1.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
The applicant's motivation for this is so that they have a consolidated, contiguous piece of land. That's what they've stated. And couldn't they just donate the blue portion or sell it to the town? They're attempting to swap it to the town.
Point of record, we did offer to sell it to the
Right.
town. And the town
Had
came
money
up
to
to
buy
us with the swap idea. If you'd like to buy it, you could buy it. We're not going to
Thanks.
donate it.
I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the chairman of the board.
This originated not to pass the buck, but this originated with the selectmen. Mr. DeRozier went to the selectmen to ask them about a swap.
Let's just be clear.
Okay.
R and I did not offer
Yeah,
that
when it
swap.
came to us, it came to us in
As
this
a swap.
version.
Okay.
As a swap.
All right.
I just want to be clear about that.
So,
too.
but the reason that it happened was because the land right now is in chapter 61A, which is the forestry piece. Some people would say that they do that to avoid taxes. Other
Yeah.
people use the land for forestry. The Damon property was in chapter 61A forestry, and that lapsed so that the property could be appraised and that they could get a decent value for their property. If the town acquired the Damon property under 61A, we would not have been able, it would have appraised differently. So part of the requirement when you have a piece of property in chapter 61A is that you have to first offer it to the town. Doesn't say how much you have to offer it to the town for. It just says that you have to offer it to the town. They did that piece. They went to the town and said, do you want to buy this land? A member of the Board of Selectmen suggested that they consider a swap. And that's where we're going with
So
this.
I'm sorry, but that's not what I just heard from the selectmen. Okay, so this is why I sit and it's just, I mean, again, I appreciate the fact that you opened this up. It's just, it's really sitting here very confusing to make heads or tails out of this whole arrangement. To me, I mean, I have no idea sitting here whether it's a good thing for the community or not. I really don't. My gut tells me that, to Mara's point, the starting point is really, what was in the Damon's best, what did they really want?
Can we hear from the Damons?
Nobody thinks, somebody...
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Are you a member of the Damon family?
She is.
I don't
feel about it?
Well, can I-
She is.
If Deb's comfortable speaking to this, I'd appreciate it.
I am. I'm very comfortable, but I'd like to get up so I can point to the map. Ann and Jean.
And just state your name and address.
Deborah Damon Bartlett, Clap Road, Scituate, obviously. Jean and Ann, years ago, did a lot of swapping with my dad so that we could have this piece of land. And for 36, almost 40 years, we had it as a tree farm, and we had it lumbered every year. Somebody would come in, mark trees, they'd take them out. Parents died, we had the land, my brother was moving, and we made a promise to my mother and father that the land would never be developed. So we went to the town with Maxwell Trust's help. We have sold it. Now this has come up. I've spoken with Frank about it, and the family's thoughts are this. First of all, we cannot do parking at the bottom. It's too wet, way too wet. The parking has to be up here, so we cannot swap this whole top piece. We can swap enough for them to get a road in, and that's it, because we need this top piece for parking and for privacy for them. That's how my family feels about it.
You just said that you
So-
can't do the swap? Or shouldn't do the swap?
So you would approve the swap as long as they carve out a piece of access road to the large...
What I'm saying is, if they need a piece, enough land to put a driveway in to get down back to their land, that's fine. That's about 20 feet, 30 feet. But we don't want to give, our family feels, we should not have to give up this whole top, this piece right here, because we need this for the parking. And that's the intent of this land, was so people could walk on it and enjoy it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think this is how we
And
start.
I do remember my point,
Okay?
which was
She's a
that...
selectman, so I'll get it.
Thank you, I'm sorry. Maura Curran, Board of Selectmen, I apologize. The piece of property that just was finalized in the swap across the street is not under a conservation restriction. So, you know, I just want people to understand that.
But it was a piece of town property
Either is this.
that it did not have a conservation restriction on it, but it was a piece of town
138.
property that was with the Ellis estate.
They're gonna go.
No,
Okay.
no.
Go ahead, so whose
No,
jurisdiction?
what the swap was,
Yeah.
with the Livingston property, was he needed access to 3A.
You need a 1
Right.
acre.
Yes, a
Okay.
very, very small parcel in return for over 20 acres, 16 or up, like to Mara's point, to do anything we want.
Right.
And the access to that 16 acres is right between Ted Coyle and what's
Right.
now McClellan House, very
In the
nice.
road that goes to the cemetery.
Exactly.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
I just wanted to make that clear.
Yep, but, and to this man's question about value, that 1 acre allows that developer to develop that land without wetlands crossings or anything else. So even though it's only an acre for 16 acres, the value of that to him was immense.
Couldn't agree
But
with you
yeah,
more.
and I did not vote for it. but it
Okay.
passed.
All right. So to your point, we should make sure that we have value for value.
Frank, we're running about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So just
all right. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Al Buckley. I'm on 41 Clap Road. I'm about a year new to the west side. It's incredible. Puzzle. So anyways, my concern is, just kind of meandering through the meeting here with everyone, is then frontage. So does frontage being in the butter to this change then what happens to my backyard as far as possible development? Are we moving development from one side of the park to the other side?
You're at 41.
2 houses down.
2 doors down.
Stone's old house.
Okay.
Newcomb's.
Newcomb's, right.
So the frontage, if we're adding frontage to there, does that then open the back up to all sorts of development?
It's hard to say, just as it's hard to say if this is...
It's just the same question on the other side.
But in order to get to that answer, you would have to do development plans, and it just appears to me right now that that's not the motivation on either end of this. At this
I'm worried if the property gets sold, then whoever's next. I'm not worried about my neighbors, as far as I'm concerned.
Steve?
I was just going to say, as far as road construction goes, they can put a road in with what they have right now. So adding this to it, I don't think they're going to get a second road because they have to be a certain distance between them. So it's not going to make it a loop road situation. So they'll probably end up with about the same amount of lots before and after. Not exactly, but pretty close.
So I'm not quite sure where we want to end this. We have a lot of other hearings this evening.
But I think the important thing to underscore here is, that we're going to wrap it up, but the important thing to underscore here is that we had this, we gave an opinion, we're looking at theoretically, we think that this would be a good idea, but there are so many more steps that everybody will have input on. First of all, we're not doing anything tonight with this. The Board of Selectmen is obviously very involved and keyed into this, and then you will have the town meeting and all of the tools that you have with the people that represent you in town meeting, and then you have the state. So this is a long way from anybody deciding anything. We're still getting the input, and there are a lot of other boards that will continue to get your input also.
Provided that Gene and Ann want to continue.
After today, who knows, right, yeah.
We'll have another meeting.
I think we'll maybe, you know what we should do real quick? Excuse me, sir. What if we got an email list from the folks that are here tonight? Do we have a pad of paper?
Yep, I can go. Yep.
Can we pass that just in the hall? Just anybody that came tonight, just sign in?
Anybody who wants to be notified of what's going on, we'd be happy to keep you in the loop,
Okay. We appreciate all of you taking the time.
Just put that on Carol's desk or something.
Plus we want to throw a date out.
With that.
I am going to turn into a pumpkin if I don't leave here in 10 minutes.
55 and 57.
You know what, if you guys want to... Take it outside, Frank. If anybody wants to ask questions in the hall and you want to answer, can you do it down by the assessment?
We made a full circle there from what we said in the beginning. And we had to listen to that for an hour and a half. It's in his purse. Whatever you want.
Imagine if we didn't have a public hearing and this just got blown up. I think everybody learned a lot. It was worthwhile.
Yeah, thanks.
Good job. Keep me sit here.
Keep me out of jail.
I am so tired. I know, but that's, I am tired of it.
Soon. No, you guys are up.
We are.
39 notice, you guys are next.
Put this out. What do we got, a raise and rebuild? Spragmites.
I'll volunteer his property.
Now I'm going home.
Got a great plan for your money.
Oh, and we still have to do the orders on fields.
What's that?
We have 2 more hearings, and then we gotta do those orders on Fieldstone.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh, well, I can't.
Oh, he's
Just come and get an education. So when I come in,
What to it?
see the one about the first one.
Discussion.
You don't need an investigation. There's no question.
Do you want to go over what?
You sent an email today, I haven't even looked at it.
I just learned, I had changed the work.
That's like the business.
So following down doing work because I'll be known about what you were talking about. Mom, and he wants, I want to take some stones from his property.
That's on the property and they can use it, is that something that can be done, I don't know. But
Get going here.
Email a couple weeks ago, and I said,
I know, it's five minutes.
I'm
Hi.
here.
I
have to hurry.
I just said,
That's my pad for if you want to
Right.
grab that pad
And I'm
for
gonna
me.
wait.
That'd be great. Thanks, buddy.
Emailed you to let you know what they were hoping.
Frank,
All right, I'll see you.
Please.
Okay.
maybe next week.
All right, Ned.
Can you just shut the door when you...
You know, there's
Moving
actually
on.
a song in the play Wicked that's exactly that's the line. No good deed goes unpunished. Exactly the line.
You know what? If we didn't have a hearing...
Oh, it would've been awful.
It would have been awful.
worse.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
No,
much
no.
better we notified about
But it took us an hour and a half to get right back to the point
Right
that
where
we
we,
had made.
where we
No,
started.
I don't think that's necessarily...
Kind of.
Let's go. Gas
Thank you, Pat.
Distribution, that's a
no,
whole nother...
it's been a year, so that's
like
good,
saying-
Frank.
Sharon, number 39 Otis Road.
You know,
On February 17th, 2016, 7:45 PM, the Town Hall of Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 30700, Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Marvell Homes, LLC/Paul Sharon, to raise and rebuild a dwelling on property located at 39 Otis Road, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend.
No, no.
Good evening, Mr. Marabito.
Otis, down by Brockton Ave.
Did you think all those people were here for you?
I thought they came to listen to you.
That's Oceanside Drive.
Yeah, I know where this is.
No, no, you know where it
Don't
is.
come back.
Okay, what it is, this is the existing house. This is the existing house, and they want to tear that down and build this.
We didn't know.
And it's the undercoast, the is way back.
Where's the water? Because that all floods.
Wait a minute, the water's over there.
Is this where
I
the
did.
ball field is?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know.
My name is Paul Marabito from Ross Engineering Company, representing the applicant for this project, Paul Sharon. He has a purchase and sales agreement to purchase the existing property at 39 Otis Road, which has an existing single-family dwelling shown on the westerly portion of the site in brown on this plan. Pragmatis on the opposite side of Otis Road. The elevation of the street varies from elevation 6 to 5 to 6 in this area here. The 100-year flood elevation and the current FEMA map is elevation 10. So the street's about 4 feet below it. On the 2015 FEMA map, it's elevation 16. The proposal is to raise the existing dwelling and construct a new one in the footprint shown in yellow on the plan. Roughly half of it is within the 100-foot buffer zone and half of it is out. The site will be regraded slightly to accommodate the higher foundation, which will be up to accommodate the new flood elevation. There will be no basement in it, just a crawl space, which would be at the same level of the finished grade around the house, and that's for insurance premium purposes. The driveway that's on the southerly side of the property will be on the northerly side to service the vehicles going into the proposed garage. The grade change on the site is within a foot or two, and it's mainly around the house to hide the foundation. We're also providing 2 banks of infiltrators to accept the roof runoff. And this isn't land subject to coastal going forward. Technically, there are no performance standards for it. The locus map, you can see where this site is. This is the ocean, this is Oceanside Drive and Turner Road. There's a ball field right across the street from it, which is where these drag monies are. I think, you know, in some of the bigger storms, this area across the street does flood.
It gets
Yeah.
flooded, yeah, big time.
Taking a rowboat.
So we have applied to the zoning board as well for a house that would be greater than 20% increase in the gross floor area. That public hearing is scheduled for tomorrow. The rest of the site would be landscaped with a lawn, which the entire site is lawn around the house now. He's also proposing to put rows of plants around it for privacy.
There's a wood retaining wall that would be removed, and this would just be graded down up to the edge of the pavement. There's 3 catch basins in the street here now, and everything on the site flows into the catch basins, and ultimately goes to the east where the water. There's no change in the drainage patterns on the site. Everything's flowing from the west to the east, and they'll continue to do so, with the exception that these banks that infiltrators will take the water from the roof and infiltrate it into the ground. With that, I'll end and answer any questions you may have.
What about when the water flow comes from the east to the west?
That's when they get in their boat.
Starts rowing.
It does happen.
We know.
So what would the elevation of the first floor be? Sorry.
Well, the first floor elevation will be 16.1, because the new beam elevation is
16.
Okay, that's what I
Right now,
thought.
it's only 10.
Okay, okay.
But what we're doing these homes are being raised and rebuilt in these zones,
Yeah.
in the A zones, they don't have basements.
No.
And what happens is the crawl space will be at or above the finished grade around the house. By
Okay.
doing that, you don't have a lower floor elevation when we do elevation certificates. So the crawl spaces are usually about 3 feet,
Okay.
and that's what's bringing the first floor up as well.
And is that all breakaway stuff?
Yes, there's
Yeah.
a set of architectural plans.
Yes, here.
The architect has 8 breakout panels in the foundation,
Yeah.
which is more than is required.
Do you want those, Frank?
What is the function of the current retaining wall?
Well, the existing house is right here. I don't know why, I don't know, it's a landscape feature. I mean, that's all I can.
Maybe just made for a front yard, a level front yard.
Okay. All right, so removing it wouldn't do anything to the stormwater flow?
No, because everything's flowing in this direction now.
Unless there's a storm.
There's a catch basin here with the elevation, the rim of the basin is 5.6. This is elevation 8 and 9 up in here. This is elevation 7 here. This basin here is elevation 5.3. This is 5.3, so everything.
So the elevation is going up at least a couple feet for the general property, so how is that going to affect the neighbors?
It doesn't, because the grade, this property keeps going up, and the way it's graded, the water would, the water's still gonna go from here, from the yard, out into the street. We can't send water into the neighbor's property, we aren't doing that.
I know, that's why I'm asking.
We aren't doing that.
Good, thank you.
Richard? Go ahead. Paul?
Looks good.
Lisa? Patrick?
If it's gonna be 16, do you have to be a foot above the new flood zone, or, I mean, do you have to be at 17 if they're at 16?
No, the current flood zone right now is 10. If the current map in effect is a 2012 map, all these elevation certificates we're doing, we have to use the 2012 map, which is the current legal map. The only reason we're doing this is because we've been asked to do it by the building department, because they know this is gonna happen. I mean, from 2012 to 13 to 15, they come up with.
Yeah, but the question is, do you have to be a foot above whatever the...
No.
No, okay.
If that were to come in, if it were at 16 now, though, you would have to be a foot above, right?
If it was at 16
Yeah,
now?
if it were 16, wouldn't building be saying you would have to be minimum of 1 foot above that? I mean, we're just trying to make sure the homeowner's protected.
Usually, though, isn't the number the first horizontal member?
That's in a V zone.
That's the velocity zone.
Okay.
The lowest horizontal structural member, FEMA says it's, say, elevation 12.
Right.
The state adds 2 feet to that, so you're up to 14.
But the question is, in an AE zone, wasn't the town saying, or the state saying you wanted to be 1 foot higher than that?
Yeah, that was my question, I wasn't sure.
I've never heard of that.
I always...
So as long as it's AE, you're saying you just have to be above?
The first floor has to be at that elevation or above, it's the first floor.
A lot of the people that have been coming in front of us said have been adding that foot. I don't know if it's because they have to, or because it's
Right,
just
but now we're
a
getting
safe thing to
into
do.
enforcing regulations that don't exist.
Yeah, right, yeah.
You know, and then we're gonna debate enforcing what doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Right.
No, we're not gonna debate it.
Well, and that's what we were just doing.
I was just asking to make sure that the homeowner
It's covered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. No, it's a good question, but
But the other thing, Paul, on the expansion of impervious, what would trigger, I mean, we may have a stormwater bylaw.
That was so much fun.
Right.
So stormwater permit, I mean, I think the roof's infiltrated is great, and the rest of it's gonna be land subject to coastal storm flow, but you've expanded the footprint, so there's a lot more impervious.
You do have an increase in impervious area, but in the stormwater regulations, if you're in an area subject to tidal flows, you can't mitigate any increase in volume because you're in coastal flow water. So the stormwater bylaw has a provision for that. What it says in essence is if you're in a coastal zone like that, you don't have to meet, you can waive having to mitigate any increase in the flow from the site because you're sending the increase into the tidal flows, which you can't do any calculations for. And you basically send water into the ocean.
Right.
But
in this case, we're not.
So, but by putting those infiltrators in there, they're gonna take up the runoff from the roof, which is probably 90% of it. The only other impervious area on the site would be
The driveway.
the driveway right here.
Square feet is this lot?
But these two things will pick up this here, TL1,
Should be somewhere.
by its
right here.
nature, does do treatment for stormwater.
Sure.
It'll also absorb some of the water as well,
Yeah.
but the main focus will be these two things here.
So are you saying that you don't have to calculate for it, or that you are calculating for it, and it's not going to be effective?
What I'm saying is, I'm not, in actuality, I'm not calculating for it because this is land that would be flooded by tidal flows.
Yeah.
And if you try to infiltrate any water into the ground to accommodate the increase in volume from this site, if that site's under 6 feet of water, it's moot.
Right. That it.
Yeah, I understand, but-
but. For the amount of change that they're gonna make there, the impact in that basin and that area is, you can't figure that out. It's so minute. You see, you've got an area that's totally flooded with millions of gallons
Right,
of
so you're gonna
water.
add more impervious surface.
Doesn't make
and
any difference.
That's okay.
Right. Plus, I'm not sure, but the lot area on this is 11,000 square feet.
That's right.
So does that trigger a?
it's a percentage of increase in impervious, is another thing that triggers, it's not only
Okay.
15,000. But to Bill's point, the stormwater is not something you could mitigate for, but if you've raised the elevation to get the bottom out of the flood, or whatever, you've raised it up a couple of feet, could you be impacting a neighbor, and it's that type of stormwater, more than land subject to coastal storm flow?
Well, first of all, you can't send water onto your neighbor's property.
Well, that's our job, to help you make sure
No, but I
that you're
mean,
not.
that's been case law for the engineers for several decades,
Right,
and there's a lot of case law on that. Even if you didn't have the stormwater bylaw, we would still
Right.
not send water to the abutting property for obvious reasons. But what this does do is, the reason we're picking it up is because of the FEMA insurance rates. By having a crawl space as opposed to a basement.
10-9,
but then it goes this way.
Right, I mean, we don't want somebody to have to sue their neighbor because we didn't take into consideration
That's right.
the possibility of flooding. That's what I'm wondering, is
But
there,
the grading on that plan shows that the water would go around the building and back out to the street, because the land is sloping from the street up toward the back of the lot anyway.
can you throw it off the lot onto the street into storm drains? Or do you have to capture it on the lot?
No, what I'm doing is, we're gonna capture the water from the roof area, which is this area in here, and we're gonna recharge that into the ground.
Right.
And then the lawn area would absorb it, and the lawn area, under BMPs, does provide treatment, and anything that's left would simply continue to go into the 3 catch basins in the street. I mean, there'll be less water going into the street.
I'm not
if this is done.
approving this.
I'm just wondering if under the bylaws and regulations, we need to verify that. I mean, I could find out, we could probably close this, and I could look into whether a stormwater,
Well, you have a zoning meeting tomorrow night
I do.
for this piece of property.
Yeah, the zoning is because we have an increase of more than 20% in the gross floor area.
So my question is, do you want to close this tonight, or do you want to, we should leave it open? Pat can check on this piece. If it's all correct, you could have orders at the next meeting. We could close and have orders at the next meeting. If we close at this meeting now, you're not going to get orders till the next meeting.
Right.
If we close it, you can't change what you've offered here. But if you have an issue with the zoning board tomorrow night, you've still got an open hearing that you can make alterations to this plan. If nothing changes, we can close and give you orders at the next meeting. So the net result for you is the same.
and I can check to see if stormwater, if it triggers stormwater, you can take care of that by the next meeting.
Yep.
Yeah, this is, it's not a major thing, it doesn't really slow down a project, but it could help protect the neighbor. And if it triggers it, we should do it before we close.
Right.
Well, what I'm saying is that if you have a 25% increase in impervious area, which we do, the plan shows that, then technically you would, if you're outside an AE zone, then you would do stormwater. But because we're in the AE zone, if you look at the regulations, it says when you're in the area subject to tidal flow, you know, that can be waived for the reasons that I explained. So what we always do on these sites is provide the infiltrators for good measure.
I understand. We got all that.
I think the proposed regulations are telling us to do this.
Well, why don't you and Pat slug that out in the next couple of days? And in the meantime, my suggestion would be that we continue to the next hearing. If everything's in order, your zoning piece clears, and you guys are good with the stormwater, or if you got to give Pat a little bit of information, we'll close and give you orders at the next meeting. So you're out of the gate at the same amount at the same time. Does that make sense?
I'm not anticipating any issues with the zoning board. The reason I say that is everyone we've done and other ones that have been before them.
We don't have the orders tonight anyways, Paul, so
I know that.
I think I'm giving you a pretty good...
But I just want to make sure that the board is clear as to why we didn't give you the normal stormwater calcs that you would usually just send off for review. It's because we're in this AE zone.
And I hear what you're saying, and you and Pat can just further that discussion.
Not tonight.
Yeah.
Right.
All right?
I make a motion to continue.
Is there anybody in the audience that wanted to speak to this?
No, they all went home. 39 Otis Road to March 2nd at 6:40.
Is this your house?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And you may not need representatives at the next meeting if we work this out too.
Don't even bring them.
Leave them
We
home.
do better.
Are the people before me coming next week, in 2 weeks? The same group?
No.
Yeah, Paul, we're inviting them every week for a while. You know, we thought we don't have enough to do. Oh. Thank you.
Well, I think the next round of the stormwater bylaw, so we have to word this.
Teague, Whitley, 0 and 9 light ship Phragmites
Oh,
removal.
Phragmites, ugh.
On February 17th, 2016, at 7:55 PM, Town Hall, Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Mass General Laws, and Section 30700, Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Nancy, is it Teague?
Yes.
And Mary Whitley to manage Phragmites on properties located at 0 and 9 Lightship Lane, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening.
Good evening. Keith Gazelle with Solitude Lake Management, representing the applicant. Pretty straightforward project.
Excuse me, do you have the abutters notification?
Yes.
Where is this?
Lightship.
Yeah, but where is
Off
it?
of Indian Trail.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just a tiny little road.
We're gonna talk about that, because
Yeah,
it's in, we'll talk about it, yeah.
it's really very tiny.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about,
Well, there's a house on each side, that's it.
right, 3/4 of an acre.
Yeah.
Phragmites infestation kind of right at the
Right.
upland buffer of the salt marsh there. Proposing to chemically treat that with glyphosate and an imazapyr-based products, Aquapro and Habitat, trade names.
Is that like mascarpone?
Oh, boy.
And followed by cutting and mulching of the dead Phragmites stands, and then follow-up treatment in years 2 and 3.
Just as a matter of educational purposes, do you have to hand rub the stalks, or can you apply it in general to?
So year 1, basically, it'll be a foliar broadcast application, because there's so much of it.
Yeah.
But then in subsequent years, when I would estimate that we'd probably see somewhere in the range of 90 to 95% control in year 1. Then after
Powerful
that,
stuff then.
Yeah, it's pretty low volume application techniques, so swiping or backpack spraying, or there's cut stem application techniques that you can use.
When you apply this stuff, how do you keep it, does it break down pretty quickly afterwards? I mean, so how do you keep it from
Well, the
going?
glyphosate will be used primarily in year 1, so yeah, there's no activity in the soil with that particular product, so it doesn't have the potential to migrate off-site and impact anything else. So we use that for the larger, more broadcast application, because there's lower risk involved. The difficulty with that product is that it's reliant upon kind of the natural functions of the plant to be moved into the root system. So in years 2 and 3, treating that subsequent regrowth, the plants don't ever fully mature. And so the plants need to enter into that starch reserve phase.
So they go send it back down again. Right,
Absolutely.
yeah, I got you.
So that's when we use the Habitat herbicide, which is, and functions in both the symplastic and aplastic, the up and down portion of the plant, so it's less dependent upon that. So it provides better potential for eradication.
This is for the Phragmites?
Yes.
I've seen less documentation for building houses on wetlands. This is impressive.
This is our first one with the DEP restoration, what's it called again? It is the limited, right, let me see.
Ecological Restoration Project.
Ecological Restoration Limited Project. So we've had notice of intent in the past, we've had people cut by hand, and we've done RDAs. This is what's supposed to be done for an
Leave your card
extensive-
when you leave.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Well,
But that's gonna be my question. What's it gonna look like in 5 years? After you treat it a few years, then you go bye-bye.
So surprisingly, it actually will revegetate pretty
Of course it will.
quickly. It depends. Some sites, behave a little bit differently. Sometimes we'll go in and do a wetland seed mix based on, or it doesn't usually work very well.
It's just very discouraging. The way I'm looking at it almost, I feel as though it's going to become a native species, not invasive. I mean, it has taken over all the cat o' nine tail spots on all the marshes that used to have cat o' nine tails. Just be loaded. I mean, it's like we're banging our head against the wall with this stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely.
Can't we why can't we get rid of it for good?
It's a pretty hardy plant.
To say the least. My backyard's full of it.
So are you saying we shouldn't do it?
Oh,
Now, let's
no,
not keep this
they
painting
can
longer
have
than it has to
fun,
be.
go do it.
Okay.
But I
wanna
know
make
it's
sure.
gonna come back.
Yeah, I know that.
All right, wait, let's work through the process here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No,
I've asked my questions, thank you.
Richard?
I'm good.
Paul?
Good.
Yes, Patrick?
wow, it's quick. So that's 30,000 square feet, over 30,000 square feet?
Yeah.
Wow, and it's pretty much all salt marsh, there's a little bordering edge of
Right.
vegetation.
Yeah.
There's, looks like an intermittent stream coming through there,
Yeah, my
too.
guess is it's probably a
Piped.
function of the fact that there's probably freshwater pooling in that area of the marsh.
Yeah.
So improved drainage may be kind of more of a long.
All of this is on site, right? On the person's property?
Yes.
Yeah, they own out into
Out
the
into the
marsh,
south.
yeah,
Okay.
and it's side-by-side houses. Has anybody seen this?
Yeah.
Take a sec- Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a large area. I mean, I've been plowing through this application. This is the first one I've seen. When would you do the work? When would be the best time to?
Again, because we're using glyphosate in year one, it's probably late season, end of August through September, when the plant forms that flower.
Right.
Because I don't want to slow down the process, but I would like to go through this with you, and you wouldn't even have to come back again. I mean, I think we'd probably all in favor of getting rid of the Phragmites, but there's a lot to this application that, I have questions for DEP even.
I've got a pretty good article on glyphosates as well, and some of the concerns. It's a question.
Sure.
So in the application process, do you set like an amount that you apply per square foot, or?
Right, well, it's per the acre usually, for glyphosate, it's 3 quarts.
Well, if we were doing a big forest, it would be but you're doing 30,000.
You just back calculate it, so it's 3 quarts to the acre is the typical, so 1.5% solution of the glyphosate.
And is there any concern, like with that material with the marsh right there, in terms of residual spray or anything like that? How does that?
I mean, the biggest concern is they're both fairly broad spectrum herbicides, so it's application technique, which is the primary means of selectivity.
Right.
It's only foliar active, meaning so if you don't get it on any other plants, it's not going to impact them. So it's not going to go into the soil. They're not going to uptake it by roots.
Sometimes with a lot of these chemicals, they talk about half-lives, things like that. How long does this?
This one's about 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah. And it naturally degrades through microbial action in the soil.
And is the applicator, the person doing it, a licensed person through your company then, or would
Yes.
it be? Oh,
So,
okay, you guys.
Aquatic licensed applicator will perform it. And so it'll also require a permit through DEP, Office of Watershed Management. It's called a license to apply chemicals.
Have you ever, you guys must do this in different ways. One of the things we've talked about with dealing with Phragmites on some of the salt ponds is to get more salt intrusion as a way to, have you, this is more of a question than.
Absolutely, it's a good long-term strategy. It's probably insufficient. Once you have an established stand, increasing salinity is probably not enough to actually kill it. It may reduce the vigor of the stand, so you may have 15-foot tall Phragmites. You might be able to shrink it to 6 foot tall type of thing. But
What
it's
about
not gonna
just
go away.
increasing water volume in and of itself? Can you drown them?
I haven't seen a depth yet.
Yeah.
That has worked.
Okay.
We're actually working on a site in Little Compton, Rhode Island, where it's growing in water depths in excess of 5 feet. So.
You're not drowning it.
Salt water?
No, because one of the
That's why
things in here.
invasives do so
Because
well.
salt water, we
Why do
try to
weeds grow
flush it.
better than your lawn? They're the hardiest.
Do you also treat knotweed as well?
We do, yeah.
Oh, we got lots of that too.
I gotta get a card here today. There you go.
Oh.
So, are you thinking that we can close this?
I'd like to talk to DEP. Yeah, and
I don't think they've issued a file number yet.
okay, right.
Oh,
The other thing is, for each specific project, you say that a DEP license is needed too, so it's not, okay, it's not, okay. So that'll give us time, but, I mean, I think we're probably in favor of going ahead with this, and we may not need the property owners to have someone come back. We could communicate by email maybe, and we could do that and find out more about.
And
This
if
is
this
quite an
all-
application, this is a great
Well, that's what I'm saying. If
application.
all this lines up, we might be able to use this, as kind of a template, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, this guy's probably patented it, so.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, it has to go with your name.
So we gotta
So
continue.
we could
We gotta
vote.
continue.
So I want to continue for how long?
Couple of weeks, and then we can let you know whether anybody has to come back. We may be able to.
Do you want to put it out a month? I mean, you're not doing
we're
the
not
application
really-
until
Okay.
August.
Oh,
And you're in Shrewsbury, so you don't want to come back, right?
Not if I don't have to.
all right.
Right.
Especially when
No
we keep you
offense.
waiting this long.
Wherever Shrewsbury is.
You don't want to come back on the same night as the land swap. That's all.
Why
Hello, March 2nd.
We do a Politan.
Blah, blah,
No,
blah.
I think he said
16th,
12
16th.
hours.
Oh, 16th.
Yeah, he has a couple of, ones. Not as big as this.
I make
This
a
is a big
motion,
one.
we
But,
continue.
you know, and sometimes people stay on it.
Like-
It seems to be working
like
pretty
Chip-
well.
Yeah, I mean, a three-year program
Until
is usually sufficient to get it under.
7:30,
On the 16th.
Okay.
yeah.
7:30,
Second.
16.
Yeah, but I'll let you know between now and then.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
You might have to call, he might not get back to you.
I appreciate it, that's great.
That's got to go into his filing system. It's the last time we'll ever see that. card.
Yeah.
Maybe you should have left
You
two.
have, you have 2 cards, give one to Carol.
No confidence.
No experience as well.
Yeah.
You
All right, where
tried.
are we?
You tried.
All right.
We're not done.
Thanks a lot.
Good night.
My feelings are hurt, I just want
Yeah.
to tell you.
Yeah.
If you had feelings.
Coastal Advisory Commission update, I didn't make the last meeting.
Coastal Advisory Commission, a fairly decent meeting for a new committee. While we are waiting for reports to be completed, which would be toward the end of June, to obtain significant grants via work of Nancy Durfee. In the meantime, the thing that came out of the last meeting was really working hard within various communities, villages of the town, to specifically talk to residents who would be affected by any kind of beach improvements that would be made about easements, and using Hummerock as the first one because of the need to take dredged material and put it on Hummerock Beach, but then moving to other villages, North Scituate, Egypt, specifically when the situations arise. And that's where it was left off, and there's a meeting, the next meeting, I think, is the 15th of March.
That was a pretty good meeting, and it's good that Coastal Zone Management comes to the meeting. I thought that was really good.
Yep.
Frank, I just want to bring you very quickly up on the Beach Commission.
Thank you, Richard.
You're welcome. He wasn't going to wait, though.
Yeah,
Moving
just
on.
before.
We all want to get out of here.
She's
so let's-
on her way to California, yeah, so.
Let's go.
I just wanted to let you know that the Beach Commission is publishing a survey in conjunction with Nancy's survey to try to get a feel of what's topical and what's on people's mind, but there are some definitive plans afoot for some beach improvements, and once we flesh those out, we'll be letting people know.
Minutes.
And where were they going to put the nude beach?
In your backyard. Okay.
That doesn't work in the
Motion.
West End.
Stormwater bylaw.
I make a motion, we accept the minutes of December 2nd and the 16th.
Second.
As written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Yay, Carol.
Yeah, you did a great job, Carol. I did actually read them.
Stormwater bylaw, has there been any updates?
Yep, we met with the planning board the other night, and it's better than it used to be. It's not perfect, and there's more changes needed to be made. We had a lot of comments from Samantha Woods, North South River Watershed, and John Clarkson.
Right.
They probably should have been brought on a little earlier in the process, but we got their comments, and it looks like the bylaw will get put forward, but most of the work will be done in the regulations. And that'll be where we're going over every little.
Is there going to be a change in the footage requirements that trigger it?
They backed it up to where it is now, 15.
Leave it at 15.
Right. At this point, it
Yeah.
could
They
change.
changed
No
to not
final.
changing it?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot going on. It was an interesting meeting.
Yeah, I'll bet. Oh, you're so annoying.
Are we still going to, is it going to impact Crosby, the road?
Oh,
Yeah, oh.
right, right. That came up from an interested resident of the town. Paul's been working on the parking lots and everything, so we need to find that out. And the amount of disturbance and the amount of alteration, it might trigger it, but maybe you could do an administrative review. But he was saying what cost that would add to.
Well, he was hoping, yeah.
Right.
So.
I mean, he's coming from Public Works too, where you try to, for important projects in the town, you try to, cut as much slack as you can, but on the other hand, you have a bylaw that everybody's following.
No, he
so.
understands that, but he just wants to,
He had good
before we get
questions.
too deep in that, Frank,
Yep.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good that he's doing this. That was,
Keeps him out of mischief.
Our access to the lands, Penny's brother Paul, who was a former town surveyor, engineer, has agreed to run the projects through the town, DPW, bidding process, all that stuff, so we'll get them out in the spring.
And guess who's the gopher? Go get me this, Penny, go get me this.
You're good at it, Peggy. That's a compliment.
It is.
Okay, anything else?
Oh, a couple of things. Yeah, we have to vote on 2 projects.
Yeah.
We closed the Fieldstone Road. I don't see anybody from,
Can we do the other one first? Let's do postscript first.
okay, all right.
That's a septic.
Postscript,
I make a motion that we accept the orders of condition for postscript as written.
Second.
All in favor?
aye.
Okay. Now,
Okay, for Fieldstone, this was Mr. Costello's project. He's looking to fill wetlands and to construct a crossing, maybe for 2 house lots. So today's the 21st day, so we have to vote and issue. We've closed already, no new information. So I've written up 2 potential orders. One is a positive order of conditions laying out replication that was submitted by Brad Holmes and a lot of information. The other one is a denial order of conditions, and that is saying the reason why we may want to deny it. And for the positive order, there was a multi-page report by Brad Holmes on what plants could go in there, timing, who would oversee it, and all of that. And for the negative, the reason would be the landowner deprived himself of non-wetland access to the site and was asking to fill a bordering vegetative wetland. According to 310 CMR 10.55, bordering vegetated wetlands are likely to be significant to water protection, pollution prevention, stormwater management, shellfish, wildlife corridors, and so that would be the reason for denial, that he didn't satisfy the protection of those because he had another way in and chose not to go that way. So those are the 2
When did
choices.
when did he get rid of that alternative access he had?
When he built his original house, and I guess there were a couple other buildings out there, a barn, a house. He's used a lot. He could have gone in that way if he wanted to build 2 single-family lots.
Right.
But-
Of course, if at the time, he probably had no intention of building 2 houses. Yeah.
Right. So now he's taking a second look at it and wants to fill a wetland to be able to do what he wants to do. And is that something that, commission should be part of?
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so, but my question, Pat, I understand exactly what you're saying, but, and that was the original question, is why should he do this? He made his choice, live with it. But then we deliberately made him go to all sorts of other meetings. We vetted the whole thing. We did close on it last time, whether we liked it or not. And so how can we now deny it?
No, we asked him to see that if he were able to get in there by going to the zoning board of appeals and getting relief, then we're good. We just sign off. He wouldn't have to come to us, They denied him. It comes back to us, and we're at the same spot of, we may still not like it, It's still requiring the filling of a wetland for 2 house lots where the big lot has already been used.
Richard, my feeling is just because I was at zoning, just because zoning denied him doesn't mean I have to accept him.
Oh, I understand that.
Oh,
I
okay.
understand that.
I mean,
But the reason for him to go to zoning and potentially be denied.
That's right.
Was that it's saying that he does not have an alternative. If, what Pat was saying, if he had an alternative to access his property from that area, then, as to Pat's point, we wouldn't be doing this. He could just bring a driveway in from the other side. Right?
Yeah.
Or he could have just...
But by zoning, by zoning denying that, then it has to come back to us.
Let's clarify that. I said the wrong thing. Zoning did not deny it. He
Withdrew.
withdrew it without prejudice.
Right.
Okay, and that definitely is different. They-
Well,
They did not come out and deny
I
it.
didn't rule it.
Yeah. They pretty much said they were not going to be able to approve it under their
Right,
regulations.
right.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
reason for withdrawing it, because once
Without
once
prejudice.
it's written in stone, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, well,
You're denied.
Right. The other way, you can
Don't
come back.
withdraw it if it's gonna pass.
That's what
Right.
Russell planted.
not only has he used his property for a horse farm and this and that, there's other uses going on out there. I think he has everything he should have. I personally am for a denial in this.
Yeah, under the regulations too, a wetland crossing is at the discretion of the issuing authority. You can allow it or you don't have to allow it.
I have great concerns when I look at that piece of property. No, they haven't shown us where they're gonna put houses, but I'm telling you right now, it's gonna be a major problem.
Yeah, but that's
Because
not
there
what,
is-
that's what
Yeah,
not
that's
this is
not
about.
what's in
I
front of you.
That's not what
understand
this is
that,
about.
but if I allow him to have a driveway in there, number one, I don't think we should have wetlands crossing there. That's,
Yeah, but that's really the end of the discussion, Penny. That's what we're talking
All right,
about.
but
You
that's
can't
what
worry
I'm saying.
about the houses right now.
If it's denied,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right,
And he
but
he could appeal.
it's like, if we say okay to the driveway, well,
Well, then he'll be back. He even told us he'd be back.
and then he'll
Good.
say, well, then, I'm just a little
Well, I
bit in
think
here.
proceed in order.
But I
There.
think Pat's argument that he's already used his options is
He's got
something
a
that
lot
Okay,
more going on.
but educate
out
me
there.
now, and I'm sorry if I don't, what did we finish the last meeting?
Do we need any more information from him to?
Okay.
And, I mean, we could have said where the house lots and all that, but he didn't come in asking for that. He just
Okay.
came in asking for a crossing. And rather than get into a battle whether you can ask for a crossing without a house, it's easier to look at the merits of it. And the wording that I found too is, the property owner had access to the area and used it for another purpose. Let's see, was adjacent to the divine access, sold off. Yeah, that's basically it, depriving themselves of a non-wetland access by going this first route. So,
Okay, and if we issue would you say, a denial on the order of conditions?
yeah.
What are his options?
He can appeal to DEP and to court under the bylaw.
Okay.
But he'd have to appeal to DEP. In the past, I think the commission has said that if you appeal to DEP, then we could enter into arbitration. There's some clause in the bylaw so that it kind of leaves it to DEP, and maybe he doesn't go in both directions. But I'll look into that if it's needed.
Okay.
But it has to be issued tonight. We would have to.
Gotcha.
Paul?
I don't know, I'm very torn about this one, because, when you say he had access, that's, when did he have access, when did he decide to build these? It's not, it's different to say somebody intentionally went and said, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna, sell off my access, or I'm gonna, but, at the point in time he decided to do this,
Yeah,
You know.
access. Right?
when? He's here now saying he wants to build 2 houses. He didn't sell access a week ago or a month ago. They're talking about all the structures on his property and stuff that,
Frank, I just want to enter something in on the record that I'm going to recuse myself only for the reason that we think I may have missed 2 meetings regarding this, and I can get right in on one, but 2 may be problematic. So I just want to make it clear that I'm recusing myself because that I may have missed 2 meetings, not for any other reason or because it was requested.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Isn't it the individual's responsibility prior to doing anything to know what the laws and rules are?
oh, they came in here and they laid them all out. They said, this is why wetlands crossings are, there's actually, it doesn't say that they can't be done. There's square footage that can be disturbed. There's a vehicle to legally do this. Now, that doesn't mean the commission has to, but he did. Greg Morris did a very good job laying
very
out, this is what's allowed under the law, this is why it's allowed, and this is how we're gonna comply with the law. So,
But he had access before,
no,
right? Yes.
when? When did he have access?
Initially, he had access before he sold land off.
When was
He
it?
didn't sell the land off. He's
Yeah.
using the land for the horse farm
Horse farm.
and for his own home.
Okay, but based on a choice that he made. It was not like a choice that was taken away from him, right?
No, you have a farm, okay, and you decide all of a sudden one day, it's a farm, it's developed. You have horses, you have barns, you have houses, you have a pool, and then you say, you know what, I'd love to build 2 houses here for my
Kids.
sons, yeah. And the only way I can access them is crossing this wetland. And then you go, well, you should have lived in a tent on your property so that in perpetuity, you would have access to these 2 lots.
I think if you were a larger subdivision, your big piece of land, you had one way in, and you developed that piece of property out for housing or whatever, and then you left a big chunk undeveloped, and you came back later and said, geez, we want to build another apartment complex or plaza or whatever, he'd say, geez, wait a minute, now you want to come in and cross the wetlands, but you've already developed your piece of property with your housing or mall or whatever you did. I think that's a pretty, sort of goes in line with what Pat's saying.
Right.
You certainly have used your opportunity to cross that wetlands. I think if I were to look at this and say, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, whatever it is, I'm building my horse farm and my home, and now I want to have these 2 additional lots. And he could, I think back when we had one of these hearings, there was the possibility he could bring his driveway all the way around to access those lots, but it's problematic because of the planning board, the length of the driveway, how long that can be. There's a whole bunch of other reasons that you just can't have that driveway come around. I mean, I think if he could draw frontage off of Fieldstone, not do the wetlands crossing and bring a driveway around the back of that, he would have done that before he went through this torture. There's other town regulations that keep you from doing that. It's my thought on it. So, and to bring that road in all the way around, let's just say that they choose to go back and do that, now you have a huge disturbance, because not only you're going across this small wetlands, you're gonna run this whole road for hundreds of yards to get to these 2 houses. So if, I guess I'm looking a little bit of a balance and saying, what's more of a disturbance? My concern all along has been, what is he gonna do with these pieces of property? And I kept asking that question repeatedly, show me the whole plan. And we've yet to see that plan.
Right, and that's what we had waited for.
So and I asked Pat this earlier, if in the orders of conditions, we can stipulate that that crossing is solely for 2 lots, and that those 2 lots comply with all of our rules and regulations. Our wetlands, the state wetlands regulations, and our wetlands regulations. So we don't, to Penny's point, somebody coming back in and saying,
Now they want to build in the 50-foot buffer.
all that sort of stuff, and say, you know what? You're gonna get your wetlands crossing, but don't ask for anything else, and don't cry foul if you don't get it.
Right.
And I don't think we can do that. I think we have to review what's before us. And, I mean, we go back to avoid, minimize, and replicate. If you can avoid it, you should have. If you can't, you got to minimize it. And if you absolutely have to get out there, you can replicate. But it's a judgment call. These are not the easy ones.
No, this is a tough one.
Yeah.
So then, let's just say that maybe our decision to disallow this crossing is upheld, right? But let's say that it's not. So then he's got his wetlands crossing, then he would probably have to come back to us, maybe, for the house projects, assuming that with the wetlands that's around there, it's gonna be hard for him to develop it without doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can I just point out one thing, because I don't think all of you were out there. The 2 house lots that he's proposing after he has his wetlands crossing, this is not virgin land. He already made a choice to use that for something else. It has been, it's been being used, it's a horse ring. You know, it isn't as though he just had these sitting there. Now he's decided, oh, I think I'll do something else with it, and he wants us to give him a wetlands crossing. He has had use of this land all along for what he wanted.
Right, it was a choice that was made by the property owner.
That's what I feel, and now he's changed his choice.
Right, but that's no different than somebody who builds a house and then comes to us and wants an addition. Well, you've changed your mind now. Now you want a pool. You had a lawn, but you've changed your mind and you want a pool.
As long as you're doing it out of the buffer zones, you can do that.
Yeah, this isn't buffer.
He is in it.
Right.
He is doing a wetlands crossing, and
We're supposed to protect it.
And there's so many other issues that I'm very, very concerned about. No, I'm not supposed to look at it. I was on the property. When something's staring you in the face and you know it's wrong, it's real hard. And then I'm gonna say he can do something.
Well, deal with that then. Write an enforcement letter but don't, that's like when you say, someone wants to do something and you start talking, what's gonna happen with the house in 20 years? That's not.
Right, it is a separate.
The issue on the table.
I understand that, but
Right.
I am against
Right.
a wetlands crossing, end of story, that's me.
Right.
I don't agree with it at all.
Right, one of the things we're looking at is a drawing of where a house could go, and that's a disturbed buffer area to a wetland. It's already disturbed, and it's a buffer to a wetland. So I understand your point. You're standing out there saying, boy, there's not only been use out here, there's disturbance right next to this wetland. And, there was a past wetland violation out there. There was wetland fill, and there was order of conditions to remove it and restore it, and all that's been done. But, I mean, this lot, there's been choices made out there by the property owner, so.
But the other violations were dealt with and remedied?
Resolved. He got a certificate of compliance on that.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So, it's a tough one.
Well, I'll just have to float my drone over his house and take some pictures.
I hope you have a license when he turns you into the FAA, yeah.
I don't have a drone, I wouldn't know what to do with one of those things.
Concom member arrested flying unlicensed drone.
Oh, I'm not supposed to do this?
This is tough.
I thought you could do it.
No, I think this is a very tough one.
It is.
But you really think that we can't impose any restriction on the area that we're, I mean, he blatantly came to us and said, this is the reason for, and that was.
But there were no house plans, no.
Right, but the reason given.
The only thing I would say though, Frank, what you're saying already basically exists, because to build the houses, he has to come to us if you allow the wetlands crossing. And you can say, well, we're not gonna allow him to be in the 50-foot buffer, we're not gonna bend the rules, we've already let you fill a wetland.
Well, I think if
you have the ability to do that without.
Yeah, I think if they're in the orders, then it just.
Right.
It's there.
Right.
And it
Well,
says,
I didn't see it in the orders.
it's not.
It's not what it was.
How about if you did it this way, Pat? What if you said, you're gonna allow the crossing, you require things when you're gonna require replication, mitigation, and we're gonna require that as part of that, in allowing the crossing, that there's gonna be no more infringement on resource areas. Word it as part of the reason you're allowing it.
But see,
like
it's
mitigation
already
and
a
replication.
disturbed area.
Right, but if a 50-foot, if we go out
The
there and they're gonna
50-foot
build a
is
house and they're gonna
completely-
mark a 50-foot and a 100-foot, whether it's disturbed or not, they're gonna mark it.
It's all
And then
disturbed.
all our approvals for a house are gonna be based on those lines, whether it's disturbed or not. And you can say, you know what, you're not gonna be in the 50, you're not gonna have a yard in the 50.
Or you could put part of the orders and say no additional infringements on any of the resource areas.
Right.
And any existing infringements must be removed.
I mean,
That's an interesting one, yeah.
how are we gonna make him?
My drone.
Well, you know, it's easy, because he can't build the house without your approval. You have to approve the plan to build the house.
Right, but once
Which
the
is gonna
house-
have an order of conditions, it's gonna have planting plans, it's gonna have location
He's had
plans.
multiple violations, it's not like this is
They've been
the-
taken care of, you can't use that.
Yeah, we're up.
This is what's really
does, it makes it-
maddening.
Yeah, it
Very
is.
maddening.
like your
Because
idea, though,
this is
Frank.
not a,
So why doesn't he
Paul.
just build one house and not infringe on the wetlands?
because, you know, he's gonna do what he wants to do.
Right, what do you think, Pat, about wording something like that, you know, as your replication, your mitigation, and there'll be no additional infringement on resource areas?
But it's not allowed anyway under the law. I mean, we can absolutely
we
say there
can-
can never be a second crossing. But, I mean, there may be a permit application for something in the buffer, and then it would be up to us to approve or deny it.
But
at
if
the
we say
time.
that right in the orders that we won't,
We definitely can say you can't cross or fill any more wetlands on the site. Can absolutely do that.
and any.
What was the other thing you
and
said
any
after
fur- Any other development,
Right, like I was saying, you know, for this project, you're already gonna say, you know, there's gonna be mitigation, replication, you're gonna, and no additional, you know, infringement into.
Or if there is
resource
any
areas.
existing, that was the one I was
Yeah.
wondering about.
Oh, remove any existing infringements.
Right, right.
Yeah, the other thing is that I was gonna ask Greg this question. It looked like it was proposed as a pipe going underneath, through the fill, you know? And there are other ways to,
we could
to
put a
cross.
box one so that, I mean,
can
the
bottom-
DEP has ones with the
Box
bottomless.
culverts and bridge. I mean, there's a lot of things.
It's a pretty minuscule,
2,000, I guess, 2,000, I
yeah,
guess.
but I mean that, the
Yeah.
area between those two areas isn't, I mean, if we had an area that we felt was a crossing for a lot of species or something,
Stream crossing or something,
Right.
yeah.
No, I mean, I've got the article on different types of crossings
Yeah.
and doing roads and making the bottom natural so that animals can move without having to go over the roadway.
Because the cars hit them.
Well, I mean, we can require that. You can put a different type of, different,
Technology for getting across the wetland.
yeah.
Build a bridge.
I would love to see, I like Paul's idea. I'd frankly rather approve it with those kinds of stipulations than deny it.
So, a box culvert or something to allow water flow underneath the crossing. A look at what might be already out there that's disturbed, that should be cleaned up. And what was the other one?
No additional infringement.
Or
will be
disturbances.
allowed. Or
Any
disturbances.
resource areas.
And the full replication plan that was shown by.
Right.
So if a vote was to approve, those could be the conditions, and if the vote's to deny, it's deny. So probably a motion. You guys want to make a motion? And also, we need we need 4 votes to approve a project. It's a majority of the commission. 4 votes to approve, or 4 votes, no, 4 to approve. If you don't get 4 to approve, it's not approved.
There's 5 of us up here right now,
Yeah.
so 3 is not,
No. No. And that's going to court back and forth, and it's still being argued. But the language I saw when I looked up, it was the majority of a commission, and it didn't talk about.
the majority of the people are present at the
Right,
meeting.
right, yeah. And I think planning board's the same way. I think planning board is the majority of the board,
Okay.
so.
So do we need to make a list of those additions to the orders?
Yeah, maybe the wording would be good.
Do you want
All
to
right.
take?
So, let's see if Carol's, well,
It was build,
a different technology, like a
Square
box culvert,
Box culvert.
bottomless culvert,
Bottomless, okay.
culvert for the crossing.
A removal of all items that are currently infringing.
Would it be removal, or would it be restoration of all areas?
Removal, restoration of any wetlands violations on the property.
How do we get out there?
Well, that's gonna give you the opportunity to do that.
I thought that everything has.
I mean, I'm not positive, but
Right.
my
Well, this is
gut's
gonna give you,
telling me
this is gonna give you
right.
the opportunity.
that is not kosher, what I saw.
Right.
And what
At
was the
all.
third thing?
No
Was,
additional
in the
infringement.
future,
No additional,
That's why-
I don't know if infringement's the
Well,
right word.
Development or,
Well,
oh, no, disturbance. No
alteration,
additional
yeah,
disturbance of no build
Of buffer.
areas or buffer zones or resource areas.
In the buffer resource areas.
Why don't we wait until we get the information from him that we requested?
No, we can't get any new information. We closed.
Closed.
Yeah, we got a big picture. I don't know, were you here at the last meeting when he sent the overhead?
No, you
Came in
with the big overhead aerial photos and showing all the access on the property.
Yeah, I
You here for that?
understand.
Oh, he brought what Frank requested.
This is exactly what we usually get. Elevations or anything, but it
Right.
shows
Yeah.
the site. So here's the crossing. It is the blue line for the wetland, so the crossing is right there. Right there. And there's wetlands all on this side. So there's buffer disturbance here. And God knows what's out here because it hasn't been flagged or anything. So this wasn't on GIS, this was flagged in the field by Brad Holmes. So what you're saying is we would look at the whole site, see what else is out of.
Right, like the town wouldn't let him go from here. There's actually more wetlands
Why
here
wouldn't the town let him go from here?
because the
Off the
length of the
cul-de-sac.
driveway, yeah, and the length to access two houses.
To accommodate.
We asked them to waive that, and they said they really couldn't. So they followed their regs pretty strictly, so. I don't know what's
Oh,
up
they
here.
followed the regs pretty strictly.
Well, this is a tough one, and this is when unfortunately, in some ways, our state law and our regs say you may allow. And it takes conditions and, an unusual circumstance.
So I'm making the motion that we accept it with those stipulations.
Okay, so everybody know what they are, the stipulations? Okay, it's those three plus the replication that was already.
Right.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. Now comes time.
So, all in favor of that?
Aye.
Aye.
I can't accept it with what we're doing. I don't think it's right. Can we sweeten the pot a little bit so it's,
No, you can't change it.
And what's your thought, Lisa?
well, I don't know. I wish I had one. I just think it's wrong to let him do this. I mean, why couldn't he alter this some way where,
There's no other access, if that's what you're thinking.
there's no other access anywhere?
Right.
Yeah, he had to prove to us that there isn't another way in
See,
and
the property's actually completely surrounded by wetlands.
or schools or,
Oh, there's wetlands out back there. I mean, that
Yeah.
goes right down to the marsh, so actually, this is the only uplands there.
So we know for certain that it is completely and totally surrounded by wetlands?
Yeah.
Well, with the ownership that he has, so, I mean, like, this is the Hatherley School.
Right.
The town is here.
Bittersweet, that
This
would
is a
be a
marsh.
wider, a bigger wetlands
wetland.
crossing. And then out behind, what's his name's house? I can't even think of his name.
So then, for
Yeah.
what you're saying is whether he builds one house or two, the same amount of wetlands is being invaded?
Or 20.
Yeah, because the limits on how much you can disturb in crossings and being allowed to do it don't stipulate to build 10 houses, to build one house, to build 5 houses. It strictly addresses crossing a wetland.
Okay.
Except that
You
his,
said this was in the wetlands. So,
the wetlands is this blue delineation.
okay.
Yeah.
And so this clear part
But it isn't accurate.
is in the wet, I mean, is this the scale?
Yeah.
It's a photograph.
The flagging down that end has been flagged by Brad Holmes recently. That's the only one we're sure of, is
Yeah.
the area of the crossing.
The GIS is not reliable.
But is this GIS or is this Brad Holmes?
That's Brad Holmes, the area where he wants to cross. That's tied in the field.
Right here. The other thing, that this crossing, I believe, is only wide enough for a couple of homes. If this was a subdivision, that crossing
Right.
would have to be much bigger. Like,
Right,
and this crossing's only for a driveway.
If planning board or somebody else got a proposed plan, subdivision plan, and it was wide in that, he'd have to come back to us.
Right.
So is there a possibility that if we allowed him to do this, he could come back and try to get it wider?
He'd have to come back.
Look, he can come back and ask for anything. He could come back and ask to put an 8-lane highway in there. But what you're granting right now is the proposal, granting or denying the proposal that's on the table. What not, what, no ifs, what might happen.
And the state allows 5,000 in fill before you have to go to court, but the town bylaw is 2,500, so he has kept it under that. And he's hoping that that road will, allow him to get into it. And for a shared driveway, it would. For 2 houses sharing that driveway, it'd be okay. I mean, there may be a way with this wording to actually improve the site. I mean, if there's a lot out there and we can establish buffers and clean up something if we have a feeling there's been work already in a wetland. So, I mean, I think that was a good idea.
So we could actually do that, this could all be contingent on the inspection of the site, and if we find other violations?
Yeah, well, it's gonna be an order, so they're not gonna get a certificate of compliance until they've complied with
And how many
the orders.
people come back for that?
We got 20 of them sitting on
I know.
the file cabinet in there.
I know.
Okay, so can we change it that they have to come back for a certificate of compliance within a certain amount of time? Is it having this open-ended thing for 15 years, like so many other
They
people?
get 3 years, don't they?
No,
Yeah,
that
no.
driveway's like 20
Now
feet
you're kinda
wide.
changing the law, though. The law is the law. That's
I
what we're
think
supposed to
the
do is enforce the
driveway
law.
was
No,
16,
no, I'm
was
asking
2 on each
because-
side,
because I
maybe.
don't
No,
know.
we're supposed to enforce the laws and the regulations that exist.
Okay, so is it a law that after 3 years, they're supposed to come back for a certificate of compliance?
Well, they should get a certificate of compliance before their orders run out, or they have to continue their orders.
Except with the Permit Extension Act, they've been given the leeway to extend it.
But they still, at some point, their orders expire.
Well, they haven't
long
since
has the Permit Extension Act
2009. Anything after.
Well, the reality is the
2009.
problem people we see, everything expired, they've had it for 10 years, and now they want to sell the house. That's,
Right, and then they want us to,
right.
and that's why I look at this and it's like,
Well,
we
the
have
other,
an
But they've already
opportunity.
violated the regulations. So you're like, well, this is like the whole, I'm gonna make another rule for the people who ignore all the rules. Like Frank said, they should get an extension, or they should get certificate of compliance, that's what the regulations say.
I mean, what you could do is you could require that whatever is found out there that's in the buffer, in the wetland, gets cleaned up before this gets allowed to be built.
Okay, I like that better.
Before the commencement of work.
Everything to our satisfaction,
Yeah.
and anything we discover.
And the applicant could appeal that decision to DEP. If they doesn't like the orders, he could appeal.
Absolutely.
Right.
I expect they will.
Oh, he will. You don't want anybody out there.
Compared to a denial.
So if he does that, then he may be able to do whatever he wants, but if we deny him, then we stop him. But of course, he can appeal that
No,
too.
He
he can
appeals.
appeal that too.
Right, you can deny him and you can go get a
anything.
superseding order from the state potentially and then do it.
The one thing DEP said, they asked me is, did he get a certificate of compliance from the first violation that he had to restore? And I said, yeah, and he goes, oh, well, that's important. And I said, okay, so,
Was that because he wanted to do something else?
no, that's because the Corps of Engineers and EPA and DEP made him do it.
Okay, so he didn't just come up and say, hey, I'd like to do the right thing. It was.
We don't
But
get a
again,
lot
now
of
you're
that.
off, your motives and intentions.
No,
Right.
but it shows character.
Right, but that's not your concern, like Pat said, the question DEP, they didn't say why did he do it? They said, did he comply?
Did he?
Okay,
Right.
but
That's all they care about.
You get the
Right.
slate clean again
Yeah.
in their view.
No, I have to deny.
Well, looks like we have a 3-2 vote.
3-2
Where's
vote.
Jeb? Where's, you guys get your Jeb.
How can he vote? He hasn't been to a meeting in a year and a half.
So it's denied.
Okay, we have 3-2
Denied, it's
vote.
denied.
Yep. So it won't carry.
I think it can live down. Okay.
Okay.
You can go back to the table if you want.
Well, let's wrap it up.
All right.
We're done.
We've had enough fun for one night.
10 o'clock.
Wanna save
We have
some?
violations, there's very little update, there's,
Labor law.
yeah. The guy across from Hatherley Road, 298, 289, he did call, he's living somewhere else, I think. He did call, he's willing to do something. 140 River Street, the last meeting, he was gonna have his attorney call us, did not.
I'm shocked.
Oh, really?
Mary's Lane, they're coming on the 16th, March 16th. 24 Webster is coming next meeting, I believe, Cal, right?
Really?
Can I just ask a question? Why do you even bother having them come in, just tell them what to do?
We wrote them.
Take the wall down.
Well, some of them we did. So-
Right, well, like 140 River, it's kind of like self-policing. We're doing this dance, we're gonna talk to the attorney, you know. The ball's in his court.
It's a different generation. We've
It's
gone
just
to the
like,
second
yeah,
generation.
take it down.
Yeah.
Why can't we just say,
That's been
take it
going
down?
on for
Can.
years.
Let's tell them to take it down.
Yeah, but what do you do? Go out with your own sledgehammers and do it?
I will.
Yeah.
I'll do it.
All right.
A different set of things
Ask
going
town
on.
council if we can do that.
Yeah, right,
We can
right.
go
We'll
with
run that by.
Yes.
Oh, I'd be out there. Here I am.
Concord Street, that's another wall, and we said, you know, it either has to come down or you file and see if it can stay up.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
Haven't seen anything on that yet. 174 Branch, a lot of quiet, nothing new on that, I guess, huh? Hammerock Beach Road, they paved part of the street, and part of it had already been paved, so they're getting an engineer to show what was done and what it was added to, and whether it was pervious or not pervious.
It's not paved, it's
Pavers.
block. Pavers,
Yeah,
pavers.
might not be pervious, they might
Right,
be,
right.
yeah. So, and then Rebecca came in today, and rear driftway, Mr. Rousseau and Mr. Trotman, we sent them a letter and haven't heard back from them.
Really?
So, well, we get 12 letters out one week and the
Where, wait, the stuff behind,
buses are.
Yeah, yeah.
who, okay.
You're stuttering.
You sound like an owl.
Oh, there was a letter. Carol might have sent around copies of the letters that went out. This is a complaint based on piles of stuff leaching down into the salt marsh.
Was that you?
application.
No, it wasn't me, but I'm
But you saw it.
interested. Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
We got anything else?
You know what?
I think that's enough for one
That's
night.
when we go after.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Thank you, ma'am, appreciate it.
Thank you.